One of my goals has always been to bring science and the paranormal together. Paranormal is just science, undiscovered or misunderstood.
Every time I keep asking how good can it get, this prompts the participatory universe to provide us with answers that we genuinely do want to live the answer to.
Hello, my name is Christopher Anetra. You know me as the quantum businessman.
And I say, you know what, I don't need to know where I'm headed. I thought I knew where I was headed before and I didn't end up there. So why worry about where I'm headed? Why not just accept this now moment, trust that whatever guided me here with you guys that I feel is divine is going to continue to guide me.
The content you are about to watch is meant for thought and consideration. Please be respectful of each other and opinions shared. This is a safe place to express thoughts, ideas, and information. Please note that no copyright infringement is intended with regards to inclusion of short excerpts of material that are included in accordance with fair use under Section 107 of the Copyright Act. IMEC, or International Mandela Effect Conference, is a 501c3 nonprofit organization designed to support ongoing Mandela Effect research. To learn more about IMEC, please go to imec.world.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the International Mandela Effect Conference mini-sode, if you will, Open Tables, Season 4, Episode 7. That's right. Yabba Dabba Doo! Mandela Effects. I am very, very excited about this episode, folks. What does the Flintstones have to do with it? Already starting off with some great questions, but before we get into everything, ladies and gentlemen, I can't do this show alone. You guys wouldn't be that interested, would you? Of course not. I've got an amazing team that does the show with me every month. An amazing team that I work with, starting off with Cynthia Sue Larson of realityshifters.com. How are we doing, Cynthia?
Excellent. So good to see you. Glad to be here.
Always a pleasure. And next up, we have Christopher Anetra. You know him as the quantum businessman. Good to see you, Chris.
Yeah, nice to be here.
And last but not least, ladies and gentlemen, we have the one and only Shane Robinson from Unbiased and On the Fence. How we doing, Shane?
Doing wonderful. Glad to be here. Welcome, everyone.
Excellent. Glad to have you guys here with us. Of course, as you guys know, this is the International Mandela Effect Conference team, and some really wonderful friends of mine, I got to say. But anyway, moving along, we've got a lot to talk about today, ladies and gentlemen. We've got a agenda lined up here. We've got board member updates, of course. What has the whole team been up to this month? We can't wait to hear from the entire team. Next up, we have something about the Flintstones. I remember a long time ago, we had a Flintstones Mandela Effect. Looks like they're back in the news. We'll find out what that's about. Followed by an Easter Island Mandela Effect. Oh, that sounds interesting. And Dr. Ruth, a volcano that spews gold, maybe? How about something going on at CERN? And I doubt it's what you think it is, ladies and gentlemen. It may be a little bit more than you expected. It was more than we expected. Pollen coronas and black coral. Then we'll be talking about Trunk Bay, St. John, and a missing palm. We've got a mystery on our hands, folks, and we'll go through that mystery together. Then we have 1939 invasion of Poland. What do we have going on there? Followed by 1776 original coins. What do you guys know about that? I don't know. We'll have to find out. Overmorrow, is that a word? What does that even mean? I'm sure you guys will be very interested in that. Stratocumulus voltuous clouds. Volutio. I'm not even sure how that word's supposed to be pronounced, folks, but we're going to talk about it some way or another. And then right whale, dolphin, giant sunfish, white loon, Indian pipe plant. So very much to get through, and so little time to get there, ladies and gentlemen. So let us begin with our board member updates. Cynthia, how has your month been? What's going on with you?
Well, it's excellent. I'm still doing interviews and coordinating all this that happens when a book comes out. That new book, of course, is my Mandela Effect and its society. So it's here, and I think I mentioned it last month too. So people know about it, but it's really wonderful if people can write a review if you get a chance. It helps it rise up, bubble through those algorithms on Amazon and Goodreads and so forth. And then my newsletter is the other big thing, and I want to share. This is a cute little dog that went missing. His name is Brody. He's a silky terrier. If you can see that, he's featured in this July issue of Reality Stars. And he went missing after he was attacked. They were going on a picnic in Newfoundland, Canada, and this tiny little silky terrier was attacked by a pit bull. So he just took off. Now that would have been kind of a bad situation, but it got worse because he's deaf. So on that poster I was showing you, it says missing silky terrier Brody, but he's deaf. So how do you find a dog when he runs off into the woods and he's deaf? In other words, he can't hear you when you're calling Brody, Brody. So they have a map that showed like what they were dealing with, but people that read my newsletter, these are basically timeline jumpers. So that's a forest. It's showing all these little spots, acres and acres of territory. He just ran off into who knows where. But fortunately, this person is quite an adventure through consciousness herself, and she was able to call in, friends, of course, and they stayed confident that they'd find this dog, and they kept sort of picturing that he'll show up, he'll present himself, because that's the other thing. How do you find a dog more than 24 hours later when he's a tiny little guy and the woods are kind of thick? But so they were contacting basically angelic assistance, and sure enough, little Brody was found. I'll show you a picture of how they found him. This is a reenactment, or maybe it's the actual photo, but he was just, this is a close-up, so he looks big, but actually he was just in a clearing, like the only clearing in this wooded area that went on for acres and acres. Here, I'll show it again. So that's little Brody curled up. He's deaf, he can't hear anything. They were able to find him successfully. And I love this whole story because it shows that no matter what reality might look like, we can recognize there might be two timelines, for example, and one where you don't find Brody and you just decide that's unacceptable. Then the other one, you're asking how good can it get? Getting angelic assistance, getting a picture. He'll be in a clearing. And sure enough, he was. So I just wanted to share that success story from this month's newsletter, Reality Shifters on Substack.
Wow, that is amazing. Like that's a really sinking feeling when you lose a pet like that. Like, and you don't know what's going on. So to have that kind of wonderful ending, that's absolutely heartwarming and incredible. I love that, Cynthia.
Thank you.
And they can find your work where at now?
Oh, yes, realityshifters.com. And also on YouTube, Cynthia Sue Larson, and I'm on Twitter, Facebook, and of course, Substack that I just mentioned.
Excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, go check out those newsletters. And like I say, every month, it really puts a smile on my face every month when I receive that newsletter. Always so many wonderful and heartwarming stories in there, and incredible paranormal issues also. Definitely something you guys want to check out. Cynthia Sue Larson. Next up, we have Christopher Onatra. You know him as the Quantum Businessman. What's going on in your world, Mr. Chris?
Well, I'm staying busy as always. By the end of the month, I should have my Act 11 of Symphony of Realities posted. The title is Mechanics of the Matrix. I go into more of how I perceive how the Matrix actually works and how this dream that we're in works, this holographic reality. I also just recently did an interview with Sonia from Tree of Knowledge, a podcast with her. That'll probably be posted either later today or tomorrow. A lot of people will find that like super interesting, some of the things that we spoke about. And some of the things that we spoke about are being covered here. And what's really interesting is these Mandela effects, they're literally like nonstop. So as a lot of you guys know, we take turns, the board members here take turns when we do our PowerPoints. And there were so many I couldn't even have. So this month was my turn. And there were so many, I was like late breaking ones too. So I just wanted to see if our producer Heather could pop up a couple, and I want to see if you guys, see them as Mandela effects yourself. The first one is for Payless shoes. So Heather, I don't know if you've got that graphic handy, but it was really interesting because, you walk through a mall and you'd see like the Payless shoes. Now it's always been called Payless Shoe Source. And it's always been called that. And because I was walking through a mall one time and I'm like, Payless Shoe Source, they must have changed the name. And then I saw somebody else posting a Mandela Effect video just recently, and she was talking about how it changed for her and how it's always been that way in this particular timeline. So I don't know if anyone else, if this like strikes home for anyone else.
Yeah, this one changed. Yeah, about 10 or 12 years ago, this one changed, and I was shocked. But it was a while ago. But it was shocking when it changed, and it had always been apparently Payless Shoe Source. But
Oh, so you realized it was a shift at the time, Cynthia? Because I noticed a change,
Yeah.
but like everyone else, I wasn't aware of the Mandela effect. So of course you're going to default to, oh, they changed the name, somebody bought them out, something like that. But I
Yeah,
didn't know
it
it had
was-
always been that way. That's crazy.
yeah, I know.
Yeah,
This
so
one, this
and
one
then
I
for me,
don't.
this is
It's
new.
troubling. It seems like a downgrade. Like the original name was better. Payless Shoes. I think that's a better name. What it fit better. It was a better, simpler sign, easier to remember. And Shoe Source. It just looks weird. It looks weird to me because I remember it the other way.
Yeah, and the other one is bubblegum. If you guys remember, there was a duck on the cover, and the duck has always been now a goth duck with a nose ring, the studded collar, the spiked hair. And just the other day, I was looking at all the bubblegum stuff, and the spiked hair was always green. And then as of this morning, I can't find any more of the green. Now it's all pink for the spiked
Now,
hair.
now, when you say always, how many decades are we going back? Because bubblegum that's an old product. You're saying
like
it goes back.
70s or 80s? Yeah, a long time.
So in the 70s and 80s, when we were kids chewing it, you're saying it had the spiked nose
That's
ring
what,
cap?
that's what
I do not remember the spike.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember bubblegum, but it didn't have a duck. That's not with spiky.
That's wild.
What is that? That's crazy.
Spike feathers.
And we can check the chat, see if anybody remembers that.
Yeah, see if anyone else remembers that too. So, yeah. So
Nut Rose says, okay, never saw the goth duck. Never seen that before, says Sage. So yeah, we're not alone here.
Yeah. So basically, like, it just seems like literally, if you're observant, almost everywhere you look, there's some kind of a Mandela effect that makes you question, like, how this reality works.
This one doesn't even make sense. Like, why would they do that in the 70s? Like, how would they get that image? There would be punk, right? But punk was not popular. They would never put a punk duck on bubblegum.
I like how the O has a little heart in it now on original. I don't remember that.
I don't remember that either.
Yeah, and sometimes it just said bubblegum. It didn't have the duck at all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So you're saying that in the original 1970s, sometimes it had the duck, but not always?
Yeah.
Or did the duck come in?
We'll have to do some further research on that. But
okay.
Yeah. So I wanted to see if that was true for anyone else as well. Like if the duck with the goth, that's been there for now quite some time.
That's totally new, and that doesn't make any sense.
No, I don't remember a regular duck or any kind of duck at all. So it's not that it's goth that it's changed. I just don't remember a duck.
The whole thing is strange.
Yeah.
It is really strange. When we start talking about the Flintstones in a little while, there's going to be some things that are somewhat related to that. So
okay.
If you're a brand manufacturer, you want to keep consistency in your brand. So why would you have Bubble Yum without any kind of logo? And then it has some packages have the duck, the same one, like Bubble Yum cotton candy flavor has the duck on some, and it just says Bubble Yum on the others. So yeah,
I don't remember a duck in the 70s. Yeah, that's just crazy.
Yeah, so that's my status.
Maybe it's a direct message for you, because didn't you say your name Anatra?
Anatra, yeah,
connects with duck or something.
Yeah.
So maybe it's telling you to get in touch with your goth side, perhaps.
Maybe,
or a yummy reality bubble, right?
Yeah, bubbles of reality, right? Know your own bubble of reality.
Yeah,
It's a new hairstyle. suggestion.
Yeah, new hairstyle. Spike.
Yeah, I'm always losing my hair, so why not?
It's time for Spike. You've done it all.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe I'll do that as the show goes on. I'll start changing it.
Awesome.
Shane, what about you?
I've been doing, of course, one-on-one sessions and going back into the studio, working on some new music. It's going to be a while before I have it out, but it's going to be more meditative, and it's fun making it because it's meditative to work on it. So yeah, so just having a lot of fun in the studio in between doing like one-on-ones with people. And of course, you can find me at uotf.net. And these links are in the description, by the way. I'll cut it short. We have a lot to cover today, so I didn't really have anything else to talk about.
Excellent. Thank you, Shane. Appreciate that. Sorry, I had to step away for just a moment there. But I am back, ladies and gentlemen, and we do need to change this graphic as there has been a small change in my life. I have cut my contract short with the Rippin' Rabbit Hole, so I will no longer be doing shows over there. That contract has ended. So I've got a new project going over on Twitter. My brother and I are doing a political comedy podcast. We do twice a week. We do the Friday surprise show on Sunday. There's a reason for that. You got to check the show out to find out the reason. But believe it or not, that there's a real reason for that. And then we do what's called Censored Freedom. That show happens on Wednesdays. However, he just had a shoulder surgery, so thoughts and prayers going out to him as he recovers, and we'll be off for a couple of weeks, but make sure you go over to the Friday Surprise Show on Twitter or Rumble and subscribe over there. Definitely look forward to having some of you guys who are interested in political aspects come on over and hang out with us. But that's enough from me here. We, like Shane said, got a lot to go over, and I'm really excited about our first Mandela Effect, ladies and gentlemen. So a couple years ago, you guys remember the Flintstones had a bit of a name issue, right? You guys remember that, the flip-flop of the Flintstones?
Yes.
Definitely. I had a
With a
relationship
T.
with that.
With a T, without
Well,
a T.
it turns out, right. It was Flintstones and then Flintstones. Flint is, of course, the way most of us remember. But interestingly enough, there's been another change to our beloved show, ladies and gentlemen, a beloved childhood favorite, if you will. When you think of the Grand Poobah Lodge that Fred was a part of, what color do you guys remember these hats being? Because I don't remember them being blue. I don't know about you guys.
I remember. I was
Cynthia, do you remember this? A dark brown?
Blue.
Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, dark.
Yeah, I would say a dark brown or like a burgundy color, but not blue and not with that symbology on it.
Shane?
Right.
I can't say for sure. I thought it was more like his shirt, maybe a little bit darker in between the two shirts there, kind of like a darker orange, brownish color.
Like Barney's
animal.
shirt.
So
I
I
think it was
would
like a little lighter than Barney's shirt.
Yeah.
Right. That's what I was thinking last night when I was looking at this picture, Shane, is that if you take the color between Fred's shirt and Barney's shirt right about halfway on the shades, that's about the color I remember the Grand Poobah hat being. Yes.
Does it seem like animal fur?
However,
yeah.
No symbols. I don't remember any symbols. It was like fur. Yeah. Right. Do you remember symbols?
So
like anything on it?
I can't be for sure, but I don't remember that.
Definitely no.
Right.
Symbol.
Like
No
you say,
symbol.
Shane, I'm not 100 on whether or not symbols were there.
Yeah, I do not remember. For myself, I don't remember symbols. And I just want to say too, so the lodge is the Water Buffalo Lodge, right? So there's all kinds of like craziness going on with the cartoon, because in some episodes it's called the Royal Order of the Water Buffalo. And then some episodes it's called the Loyal Order of the Water Buffaloes. And then in some episodes, the sign on the building just says Water Buffalo Lodge. So again, like either there's some kind of major flip-flops going on with the Flintstones, or the time frame, the time period that these cartoons were made, where things were edited back together. But there's a lot of really interesting things going on, including there's some episodes where they just have the blue hats and there's no symbology on it. So it's really, it's fascinating. And then what does the symbology mean? And I think we're going to go into that in like one of the next slides. But yeah, for the first thing, like when I first saw this, I'm like, blue hats, like that's definitely new. I do not remember the blue. It just jumped right out at me. And Shane, you were talking
This
about
is one of those.
Oh,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say, Shane earlier was talking about Wilma, I'm home.
Right.
Yeah. Talk about that for a minute.
Yeah. So I remembered it was either in the outro or the intro of it. Every episode he would say, Wilma, I'm home. I thought it was when he got off work. I can't be sure about when it was, but I just remembered him saying, Wilma, I'm home. And then somebody said he's never said that. And I'm like, what? And then I'm like, what? He even said it in the remake movie with the actual live action characters.
Yes.
And he did the Wilma, I'm home. I remembered it being in the trailer and I thought, oh, that's cool. They're like playing off of the cartoon, but you know, I guess he remembers it like I do because he said it just like you could tell he was trying to sound like, you know, the original Fred when he said it.
Like just the intonation and everything. Well,
yeah, but he's supposedly never said it. And I watched the intros and outros and the people are right. It's not there. I can't find it anywhere unless he did it in one little episode somewhere because I didn't watch all of them, but he doesn't do it anymore. And I remember Wilma, I'm home.
Wow.
That's like the I Love Lucy one, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Some splaining to do.
Got some splaining. He'd walk into the apartment all upset at Lucy. You're like, Lucy, you got some splaining to do.
Yeah, and he did that quite a bit.
Lucy, you got some splaining to do.
It was almost always that punchline when she finally got busted for whatever she was doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It was so common. It was a pop culture theme and the whole 9 yards.
I would say she did it in more than less. Like the majority of the show, he would say that to her. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And so when these catchphrases change, like another one for some of us that are old enough to remember is Laurel and Hardy, where Hardy would say, "This is a
fine mess
you've gotten us into," and now he's always said, "That's another nice mess you've gotten me into," and it just is like, no, that's wrong. That's wrong. So, yeah, these timelines are merging fast.
Right.
Fasten your seatbelts.
Polling the audience over here, and this is one of those that, like, when you see it, it feels wrong, right? The blue hats, they just that's not what you remember. It just feels so off. Well, apparently, we're not the only ones that think so, guys. Mr. Floyd Channeling says red. Rose says, weren't they brown? Ruth says brown. Floyd says orangish. Rose says the symbols have been there. Blue and orange hats are in YouTube at the moment. Leftover effect. Francesca says there's residue with brown hats. So we got the residue hunters already in the game, looking for residue for it. That is so awesome. Fred toys with the brown one. So everybody remembers it being brown or reddish brown, but definitely not blue by any means whatsoever.
Would have made me wonder what animal did they get that from? How did they dye it from brown to blue? Because it looks like fur, right? So I would have been wondering, like, what the heck is that?
Well, I did some research. They say that the water buffalo is actually, when it becomes an adult, it changes to like a slate blue color. So the water buffaloes do have that blueness. I think there's two main different types of species of water buffaloes. And then I was looking up, like, what's the spiritual meaning of a water buffalo? Why is it called a water buffalo lodge? And one of the, it has to do with strength and courage. And one of the meanings is connection to Gaia, connection to Earth Mother. Yes. So I thought that was interesting too. So you've got that whole thing about connection to Earth Mother, and then you've got the symbology of the wet moon, and then the sun above it. Yeah, and we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go on. But it's all like, again, these are the puzzle pieces that we're getting that are being revealed by these.
Well, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, though, Chris, the orangish brownish hat hasn't completely disappeared, as been pointed out by some of our audience, but that's a special hat, isn't it?
Yeah. So this hat is I think his name is Sam's Sledge Rock or something. He's the Grand Poobah of the Water Buffalo Lodge. And in the very first episode, there's only one episode where this character is introduced. He's got the hat and it's orange and it's got the symbology on it. Then all future episodes, it goes, his hat changes to blue. So, the Flintstones are known for their flip-flops and things that aren't consistent. So this was like another type of a clue about what's going on in the reality with this guy's hat being orange. And then,
Wow.
And as you point out here, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, so there's a picture here of the Challenger astronauts, and they've got the blue uniforms. And a lot of people remember that the space shuttle astronauts always wear orange uniforms. So again, it's that, to me, it reminded me of that color change. It went from the orange to the blue. What are colors? Colors are basically frequencies. And then I was just this morning, I was scrolling, I was typing in space shuttle astronauts and scrolling through all the different uniforms. And now there's blue, there's orange, there's red, and there's yellow. So we're starting to build a whole rainbow of colors here. So I thought that was really interesting as well. Believe me, I've been scrolling space shuttle astronaut uniforms for a long time. And this is the first day that's happened where I've seen the yellow and the reds now appear. So.
Wow.
Rose in the chat
the rainbow
says,
is
"No,
something
those
we
hats-"
see.
Sorry.
Go
No,
ahead.
those hats were dark brown. Cynthia's right. Blue makes no sense. Neither does orange. Thank you for chiming in, Rose. And I saw your comment earlier about the Egyptian symbol, and we're going to get to that on the next slide. That was very perceptive of you.
Do we want to go to the next slide?
And yeah, go ahead. I totally forgot where I was going with what I was saying. So go ahead and the next slide.
My bad.
Oh, you're good. You're good. Oh, I was saying the rainbow effect we've seen within the Mandela Effect quite a few times, from the rainbow rivers to the rainbow creatures to different rainbow aspects. And now, as Chris pointed out, we're getting the rainbow spacesuits, right? So the variety of colors of spacesuits.
But we're missing my favorite two colors, green and purple, unfortunately.
Stand by.
Stand by.
Yeah, stand by. Wait, right.
Start scrolling again, and all of a sudden, boom, purple. What?
Yeah, it turns out they use these for a very special mission that nobody really knew about. You know how the Mandela does, right? Especially when it goes to adding symbols, especially when they match ancient mythology symbols, like the one that we see depicted on the Water Buffalo Lodge hats. Now, I'm not sure either way whether the symbol was there or not, but whether it was or not, the meaning of the symbol and that they were showing us this as children, if it was there, is incredibly interesting, to say the least, right? So where does this symbol come from, guys?
Yeah, this is ancient Mesopotamia. This
well,
is
just to remind people about that previous episode too, the Emerald Tablet ones, Chris.
Why don't you remind everyone?
Yeah, you brought up, we had one on one of the shows where we were talking about if it was Thoth the Atlantean.
Right.
Or people remember Thoth. Anyway, that book of the Emerald Tablets, the screen had that sun with the disc underneath it, the sun disc with the line like you see like that underneath it. And that's been depicted. We were talking about Alat Ra at the time, Alat Ra on that episode. And they had that symbol on their book as well. So Alat Ra is sort of
that
like
was with the eyes.
Right.
It was because of the eyes. It was the eye episode, right, Shane?
Right. Yeah. The one with the lady with the reptilian looking eyes. She was part of a group called Alat Ra. And that means, and that symbol means Alat Ra. And it means Ra is the sun and Alat means the other side of. So supposedly there's like a counter planet that we can't see because it's always being blocked by the sun or something like that. And that's where they're at. That's Nibiru or whatever, which we're going to go into all of.
Yes. Yeah, and that's the connection with Sumeria, because as you see on the slide here, the symbology is recognized in Sumeria, in ancient Sumeria, as the moon god Nana. I'm not sure I pronounced it correctly.
Nana, I believe it is.
Yeah. And then we were noticing that this Cheshire sort of a moon phenomenon is something we've definitely noticed with the Mandela effect. But now, when the moon goes through its cycles from full and it starts waning and starts getting smaller and smaller, now we're seeing it in this configuration that looks like the Cheshire cat's smile, which is something new to me and new to a lot of us who've been tracking the Mandela effect. So now it's looking much more like what we saw in ancient Sumeria, which is new to me. And I don't know if I think it's new to most of us, right? This position of the moon.
Absolutely. Yes. It would actually denote a change in the position of Earth, would it not?
That's right.
Exactly. That means like the orientation of the moon and Earth and how it rotates, something has changed for the moon to get into that configuration. And every time I see it, I'm like, I'm still freaked out by it. I'm like, the moon was never like that. So, yeah. And I think it's a super positive sign. I think it's a sign that we're in a higher timeline. And even these ancient hieroglyphs from the Sumerian Empire and so forth. Now, I've done research into that. I've never seen like this one, like with anything where the moon was in this orientation. So even having these type of petroglyphs or rock carvings is totally new. I'm not an expert in ancient Mesopotamia, but again, this came into my reality right around the same time when the smiling moon came into my reality in the sky. So I feel there's a connection. And now we got the Flintstones giving us like an extra bit of authority that something is going on with this planet, because we know about the geography of the planet changes. You know, we know that the geography, the islands, so forth, is changing. And now we've got changes with the moon's orientation. There's changes within the solar system itself. So there's a lot of things going on.
Well, it was even noted way back in the beginning of Mandela Effect that we were on the wrong arm altogether in relation to the solar system and the universe and the Milky Way and whatnot, right? So there's been a lot of different, over time, different aspects of this same thing coming up over and over and over again. And we keep seeing signs pointing right back to it, including this Sumerian symbol. But it isn't the only symbols and petroglyphs that have been showing up around the world, right? Next slide, please. We have some new old petroglyphs. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Only in the Mandela Effect would that sentence actually make sense. But for if you know, you know, right? Easter Island statues, ladies and gentlemen, now contain petroglyphs on the back depicting the Birdman tribes. That's right, Birdmen, folks. So men that fly, or men that maybe came from the heavens, men that acted as birds, maybe. You know, the ancients had a weird way of depicting things. What I don't remember is them being on the back of Easter Island statues. Cynthia, am I wrong? Do you remember this?
I would have remembered something like this. It seems like these statues keep changing for me. Like the hats were new for me relatively recently, a couple years ago. Now this is, and if this had been here, these carvings on the backside, I'm sure that I would have also noticed, like, look at this too. There's just been so many revelations. Like they've got full bodies, they've got hats, they've got something going on with a bird man. Absolutely, that's new for me. And I'd love to know if it's new for people in the chat too.
I think I would have thought these were the front if I hadn't known any better, you know. Like I remember the backs just being really plain, you know.
Yeah, and I think for some people, they started seeing the changes to the Easter Island statues going back to 2017. And like for me, I always remember like looking at the pictures of the statues and they were all buried. And then all of a sudden they were, you know, a lot of them were exposed and they continued, they're doing excavations and so forth, but some were always exposed. And then the red lava hats appeared, which is like really bizarre. And then they had more human anatomical features. Like if you look closely at the front, they actually have nipples. You can see
belly button.
Yeah, they've got hands with their fingers near their navel.
Oh, that's right. There's hands down there. But then none of that was uncovered before for us, right? Weren't they just pretty much just the heads sticking out? Is how I remember them.
Well, some of them some of them were always exposed in this reality. They have been excavating some, but some were always exposed.
Oh my gosh.
Now, here's the problem for me. It's not whether or not they're exposed. The Moai, the Easter Island statues, they were a mystery. Nobody know who built them. They didn't have any references to any tribes, to any way besides the Rapa Nui people's stories. They had no references to any past reason why they would have been there, not holding petroglyphs, not telling a story. Like, this would have been part of the research. I at least I would like to think that it would have been, right? Not the story of, well, they're just these statues and they got nothing on them and we don't know what they are or where they came from or who put them there, right? Like, this would have been evidence or pieces of evidence to suggest that, right, this tribe or that tribe or Birdman or a connection to this. Like, there's never been these conversations in this research. And I know this whole team has been into this kind of research for quite a while now, right?
Oh, yeah. And I'm going to say, too, someone asked the question, like, what's the statue in the middle?
Thank you. I was just going to point that out too.
Yeah. So what they did is they took the petroglyphs and they just highlighted them with color. They're using some kind of paint or chalk to make them stand out. So the one to the far right is without any kind of colorization, and the one in the middle has the colors added to it. And
so they're the same one, just highlighted, right?
No, I think they're different.
It's a different
They are
one.
slightly different.
Yeah, one's got the hat.
One hand is up.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I see.
And Jerry, you dropped the name Rapa Nui, right? So Rapa Nui in Polynesian actually means navel of the earth. So it's interesting that their hands are like pointing towards their navel area, navel of the earth. And the orientation of most of the statues, from what I've seen, is all pointing, the statues face inward. And I think, Jerry, you said you knew of some that face towards the water.
Yeah, toward the Polynesian islands, there's a line of them at the edge of the island. I found this in a documentary years ago, so this may have changed since then, grain of salt, right? But at the time, there was a series of statues, and this is why they believe that the Rapa Nui may have came from Polynesian ancestry, is because they were facing the Polynesian islands, kind of watching over their ancestors, if you will, was the concept that they were going with.
Yeah, so I recently saw a map of all the statues and their orientation, and they were all facing inwards. Okay, so that's what I saw, and to me, it would seem more logical that they would face outwards, like they're protecting the island, but instead they were facing inwards, almost like guarding what could come through the island, what could come through the navel or the umbilical cord of the island. So one has to ask the question, like, what really is going on with this? And is there some kind of a possible entrance into inner earth or some dimensional stargate or something that they're actually protecting, via these statues? So, my hair's getting all tingly as I'm saying this. Yeah, so there's a lot more to these statues than meets the eye, front and back. And I wouldn't be surprised if time continues, either more statues appear, there's more features on the statues that we didn't spot before. But now we're looking really closely at these statues, so we know that there's something going on. And again, this is another puzzle piece to the way the reality works.
And this Birdman theme is super interesting too, because we've seen that in other ancient sites that go back thousands of years.
Mm-hmm. Shall we go to the next slide? I think.
Yeah.
Including in Egypt also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And places like Göbekli Tepe.
Thank you. No trouble on that.
And let's see. In the handbag.
Go ahead.
Talk about that, Cynthia, would you? What we deem these little, I don't know,
what are they? Well, this is, I think, the best.
Gucci of the gods.
Yes.
Gucci of the gods. With the watch and the handbag.
Yeah, we should turn this over to Christopher Onatra, because he did a fabulous, wonderful
that's right.
video on this.
Yeah, so I got a video on my channel called Gucci of the Gods, with these handbags, because you see like the ancient Mesopotamia, the Anunnaki gods holding them. This one from Göbekli Tepe. At the top of that statue, you can see 3 handbags. what are those handbags? And from looking into it, there's all different theories. I think it was Graham Hancock that said that they were bags of drugs, and some people have said they were bags of seeds. And then I was getting that they were handbags or pocket books related to pocket universes, alternate realities, worlds within worlds. So they had a technology where they could create, let's say, a matrix within a matrix. And then is it possible that these animal depictions on there are from these other worlds that they've created within this world? And so the whole Gucci of the Gods episode goes into it. I have some people talking about pocket universes and how they form theoretically, and the possibility of that. So again, you got the links of common things, throughout the planet. What is the symbology of these handbags? And then, it goes back to Easter Island. It goes back to the Flintstones. So there are all these different things that are all related. And there's a connection. I know there's a connection between all of this, and we're just getting all this information put together. But I thought it was really interesting about Göbekli Tepe. And I think, Cynthia, you were talking about on one of the last episodes we did about how they had changed the whole complex. Like they're not allowing more archaeology excavations to happen.
That's true. They've stopped it at 5% or maybe 5 to 15% excavated. And then they planted trees over a part that would normally be excavated and investigated. And they put a parking lot over another section. So it's kind of like they're just stopping all of the research and the exploration of the site at Göbekli Tepe. And it's also apparently been purchased or is being financially controlled by members of the World Economic Forum for some reason. So none of this has been properly explained as to what's going on.
Yeah, because like when I tune into it, like this is going to sound weird, but like at Göbekli Tepe, I get that was a spaceport. Like a spaceport, how could that be? Did they actually have commerce with other species, visiting species? Yeah, and the same thing in Egypt. There are parts of Egypt, like when you tune into it, like, oh my God, that was a spaceport related to Atlantis, or after the last fall of Atlantis. Same thing with the Mayans and their ancient culture. You see, they were a space-faring race, so to speak, in all offshoots from Atlantis.
They also were sometimes carrying something that looked like a pine cone with a pointy end projecting outward, sort of. So they've got the handbag, and then sometimes they'd hold the handbag in one hand and the sort of hand-sized pine cone device. Kind of like, it reminded me of Doctor Who and the sonic screwdriver. So I felt like, what is going on there? But maybe it's connected to the pocket universe concept. It's not really saying what it was, but some really interesting depictions in these ancient carvings that go 12,000 years back.
And the watch.
And the watch.
They wear the watch. And what's the
like
purpose of that watch? It's all technology.
It is.
Call your ship, activate camouflage, whatever it is. So so there are all these different functions to the watch as well.
It's almost like but that makes sense with the spaceport, with the idea that something like Star Trek, or where they've got the communicators and all that stuff, the phasers. So they got their little devices.
Yeah, and on the right side of the slide, it says that the depiction of the handbag-shaped carvings is found in Mesopotamia, the New Zealand Maori art, Dogon wall paintings, American petroglyphs, and remote islands such as Sumba. So it's all over the planet, all different time frames as well, all showing.
Chris, when it comes to the paranormal, something like Mandela Effect, we all agree that we remember something a certain way. And a lot of us have never met each other a day in our lives across the community, right? But we all agree we remember something a specific way, regardless of what history denotes.
Right.
We have a large amount of case files from a large amount of people who don't know each other who are saying the same thing. Here in the ancient history, in the ancient times, no matter what continent you're on, we have a large group of people saying the same thing who have never met each other across many continents in the ancient world. So they didn't even have writing to write it down and send it to their buddy across the world and have him do it, right? Like that wasn't a thing back then. So we've got these same case reports from the ancients all saying the same thing, who've never met each other, who are telling us what's going on. At this point, I'm inclined to believe that they're telling the truth, right? Just as much as a Mandela Effect person would be telling the truth, where I'd be inclined to believe them if they had something that we all agreed, yeah, they used to be that way, right? Yeah, it always used to be Jiffy. Yeah, the Berenstein used to always be Berenstein. Yeah, Mandela died in the 80s, not in 2013, right? Like, it's the same concept to me. You've got a large group of people saying they seen something regardless of what history or what else anyone would say. You know what I mean? You see where I'm going with this.
Yes. Oh, yes, absolutely.
I'm in the chat. Rose says, I've heard the handbag might be a battery. They are in India also. I don't know if we mentioned India in that list.
You know, that's interesting about the battery, because in this podcast I did with Sonia from Tree of Knowledge, she's a remote viewer. So she's like, let me remote view what's in that handbag. So she was remote viewing it, and she's like, I see like metal and sand at the bottom. She's like, it's like a Baghdad battery. And I'm like, yeah, there's got to be a battery structure to power the pocket universe. So she was actually tuning into what was inside the handbag.
So it's a device of some sorts, is the best way. It looks like a handbag to us, but of course we would think that about anything, right? If we're going to pick the closest thing it looks like and then say, oh, it must be that. Even the watch might not have anything to do with time. You know,
and then the pine cone thing, the sonic screwdriver thing.
Bubbles of reality within bubbles of reality.
Yeah, they could all be connected.
Or some people
a battery, you know, sort of powering the watch, and the watch is the display, if you will, to control it or something. Yeah.
Where some people are alive and some people are not. Some people are alive again and some people are dead again. Ladies and gentlemen, do you remember when we were kids, there was a certain radio program that would come on, and no, I don't mean Howard Stern, that usually, Shane, you pointed out in the green room earlier, our parents told us to leave the room. We weren't allowed to listen to what this particular person had to say. You guys remember this?
I totally remember. Yeah, I wasn't allowed to watch. I'm too young.
So the person I'm talking about, ladies and gentlemen, is Dr. Ruth. Do you guys remember Dr. Ruth passing away at any point?
Let's show the slide. That way people will be reminded of what she looks like. Because, it was a while since I'd seen her.
When I seen her, it clicked right. I know who that is. That's Dr. Ruth.
So she had a radio show? Because I remembered her being on TV. Was she just the guest on some shows maybe sometimes?
Definitely had a radio show. Absolutely had a radio show. And she was a guest sometimes on TV. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't remember if she had her own TV show, but I know she had her own radio show for sure.
Right. I'm not sure about the TV show. It may be on HBO or Skinamax or something.
I think she must have been a guest on something else, like Geraldo or something back in the day. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And so when she just recently died on July 12th, all of a sudden all these boards lit up like, I remember her dying in 2017. And some people are like, she died already 2 times for me. So for some people, it was the 3rd time she died. So yeah, this whole, and she had that voice, you know, Dr. Ruth would talk like this, and she would say her funny things about like human sexuality. It was very, very entertaining just to listen to that. And then the topic she would answer people's questions, because a big part of the radio show, people would call in and say like, blah, 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 I need help with whatever. And then she'd go into her whole spiel about how she could help the person. So yeah, and it was very like cutting edge at the time.
Oh, Sexually Speaking with Dr. Ruth. Thank you for that, Mr. Floyd Channelings.
Cool.
Radio late night. Okay. So yeah, I was probably on Coast to Coast AM. That was what I was allowed to listen to.
So it says here, many remember her passing in 2017. I'm going to refer to the chat real quick. Helen Skygazer the Frosty specifically says 1990s. So I've not said a number thus far when we've been discussing this backstage. I remember the 90s. 100%. I remember the 90s, her passing away, late 90s at that. I remember it being, it's a sad thing. Dr. Ruth has passed, a great radio show host, is, her legacy, this, that, and the other. It wasn't a big deal, wasn't parades and whatnot, but I remember when it happened, right? At least I thought I did. But yes, Helen, 1990s is exactly what I remember. It wasn't 2017 by any means. Then again, maybe she died a couple times. I hope I get multi-deaths.
Yeah, right. And what's interesting too is like when you come into these realities where the person has, all of a sudden they're alive again, it's really interesting. So you're dealing with a different timeline version of them. Obviously, it's not the same person because on another timeline they had passed. Are we dealing with a better, improved version of them? And that's the way I see it. Like I see like Dr. Ruth in this timeline was a better version, let's say, than other timelines. Same thing with name changes. We see the name changes all the time. Like the name changes don't stop. So we're actually dealing with another timeline version of that particular person that's merged into ours. And to me, I'm always viewing them as a higher frequency timeline version because we're going into the higher frequencies as they're merging. So this is like let's say a better version, if you can say that about whoever the person is. Maybe slightly better for the most part, maybe not all the time, but a different version.
I'm with Rose in the chat. Rose says, never heard she was a sniper, but I could believe it. Yeah, that's wild. She was also known as a sniper in the Israeli army.
Yeah.
Yeah, right with you, Rose.
You know what else she said she was good at when she was in the Israeli army? Throwing hand grenades.
What?
She's like, she would always hit the target. So like, watch out for Dr. Ruth. I don't know what to say about that, but yeah, you don't want to go against her in battle. Maybe just listen to her on the radio.
Horseshoes and hand grenades.
Definitely not in a hand grenade battle anyway. Probably pretty dangerous with water balloons too, if that's the case, right?
Yeah, Dr. Ruth Westheimer.
Or perhaps we got the one from the golden timeline, as we seem to see more and more evidence of gold showing up on our timeline, like this right here. Mount Erebus on Ross Island in Antarctica is an active volcano, ladies and gentlemen, with a lava lake at the top that spews out over $6,000 in gold a day. I'm going to repeat that. This volcano spews $6,000 in gold a day. The USA built McMurdo Station at its base. Is this related to Atlantis? Chris, this seems right up your aisle. What do you got, bud?
Yeah, so Mount Erebus. So when I was like, beginning to wake up and seeing visions and so forth, Mount Erebus was always coming up for me, always coming up. Like I would like set the intention, show me some place I need to go. And it would always show me Mount Erebus. And I'm like, oh man, it's way too cold there. Can we pick someplace else? So I feel at some point in my future, I'll be going there. But Mount Erebus is on Ross Island, which is an island off of Antarctica. And it's interesting because the U.S. built McMurdo Station, as Jerry just said. That's right at the foot of the volcano. And the gold that it spews, all the research that I've done on this thing for years, since at least 2017, it never said anything about gold. And now it's $6,000 in gold a day, which is equivalent to $2.1 million a year in gold coming out of it. And it gets dispersed. They say it gets dispersed up to 1,000 kilometers. So all of Ross Island and the snow that's there has all these gold particles inside of it. So why? Because there's some huge gold deposit that's under this volcano, and the lava is bringing it up. So Mount Erebus, I know, is special. I know that it's related to Atlantis somehow. This is like when I tuned into it, the first fall of Atlantis was related to Antarctica. So there's a lot of interesting things that are happening. So this is a Mandela effect that just jumped out at me. And a lot of us have all heard the stories about other things about Antarctica, whether it's the Germans going there after World War II, or, whatever it is. All these US politicians went down there, I think around 2017 for some reason, and it was never really explained why. but there's something going on there. And what's her name? Lisa Moulton Howe, who's like a whistleblower on
Linda
ET.
Moulton Howe.
Thank you.
Linda.
Howe. Thank you. Yeah, she was actually talking about these like Navy SEALs and so forth that found this underground complex that was near McMurdo Station. They found an entrance to it, and just like these huge rooms that were made out of black obsidian with hieroglyphs on the walls, and there were no supporting beams. And so it's really fascinating. So I think there's going to be things revealed about Antarctica going into the future, as well as any kind of disclosure event that we have. So fasten your seatbelts, because I think it's going to be a very interesting ride into the future about what gets revealed about the reality.
It reminds me of the biblical manna, which some think was ormus. Ormus, of course, is powdered gold. They found this in a lot of the ancient Sumerian sites, as we were speaking about, as well as Göbekli Tepe, if I'm not mistaken. This white powdered substance that at first they were just kind of brushing off, and they finally took a sample of it and realized that's powdered gold for whatever reason. And this can be actually fed to humans. It's very healthy and very positive for humans in this monoatomic form. Now, don't go eating gold rings. It's not going to have the same effect. It has to be in this form to have the effects it has, right?
Yeah, we're not offering any kind of medical advice or anything. We're just saying.
Absolutely. This is the research that has been supposedly done, right? Very good. Yeah, not medical advice by any means. But please don't be eating gold rings. That's definitely not a good thing.
I think this is really
but this is
interesting.
being put in the atmosphere.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And this is, I think I would have remembered hearing about a volcano that's spewing gold into the atmosphere. And so this is totally new for me. I don't know if people in the chats have heard of this before, but to me, this is clearly a Mandela effect with, and the ice dragon thing, that's interesting. I don't know what's going on with that. Do you know why it's called that, Chris?
Well, this is that where it says Erebus, the ice dragon. That's a book that someone wrote.
Right.
So, and when I saw the cover of that book, I'm like, I need to include that, because there's something going on with gold and dragons and this huge deposit of gold that's under this particular volcano. I know that it's all related. So, and a lot of people know I talk about the dragons a lot. So, yeah. And just how it also forms these ice, really interesting ice vents. It looks almost like art. So at the top of the volcano, when there's a release of the steam and so forth, it'll create, the ice goes up and it creates these really interesting structures. And there is something called Erebus crystals that also come out of Mount Erebus. I had heard about that like years ago, and how people, like geologists that would visit, they would collect the Erebus crystals and then they would sell them on eBay. And as soon as they put them up for sale, they would like sell out. It's like really hard to get one of these Erebus crystals. But that's all I had heard. I had never heard about the gold aspect of it before. So.
Wow.
That's so interesting. It reminds me of, since we were talking about, ancient Sumeria and the Anunnaki coming here to mine gold and all of that. It sounds like they were coming here to mine gold to take it back to their planet with a atmosphere that was deteriorating. So it's said, that's how the story goes. But if we have Earth pumping gold into our atmosphere and it's good, it's almost like when we see upgrades happen to our human body. It's like the Earth is getting this upgrade and it's pumping gold into the atmosphere to counter some of the other stuff being pumped into the stratosphere, perhaps. Something to think about. Yes, for entertainment purposes only, Gypsy JJ. Thank you for that.
Yeah, when a lot of times too, when people think about dragons, they think about colors of dragons or types of elemental dragons, rainbow dragons. There's such a thing as gold dragons. So could there be some kind of a gold dragon at the base of this volcano? It's just it's really interesting, how they associated the name dragon to this volcano and how it's spewing out the gold. So I believe there's a connection there.
That is absolutely fascinating. Perhaps they need more gold for the experiments going on at CERN, right?
With all those colliders, perhaps.
With the amount they have now, next slide, please. They may need a whole lot of new material to work with, ladies and gentlemen. But let's not start there. Let's start with the face of things, with their logo. anybody feel that this logo just isn't quite right?
Yeah, I do. I was looking at the logo for CERN back in May, just 2 months ago, and it didn't look like this. So now what we're seeing is not just the 3 6s, which to me, I thought they were, well, maybe we should find out what people are remembering in the chat. Is anybody else? Yeah, someone said 666. There we go. Thank you.
Right. And it's been well known that 666 has been in their logo for a while. This has been across a lot of the fringe and paranormal research groups. This has been like a thing. What are they connected to because of the 666 in their logo? However, either those folks didn't know how to count or something has changed, folks. Because when I look at this logo, I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 6s. And that just don't feel right to me.
Yeah, you can tell that the logo's gotten more complex. Having those extra couple of 6s in there makes it look, it jumps out at you like, oh yeah, it looks different.
It's crowded. It looks more crowded. Used to look more elegant just a couple months ago. So we got one
It's
person said
interesting.
666. Yeah.
Yeah, Miranda Anderson says too many lines, although at one point I'm sure there were 6 6s. Interesting. Yeah, if anything, that second ring to me seems like it's missing an inlet. You know how they all have like, I don't know. That kind of brings up the question about accelerators and decelerators, because apparently now they have decelerators, and I had no idea about particle decelerators. You know?
Yeah, so
Yeah, that's a new one to me. Go ahead, Chris.
yeah, I was going to say, so like I was doing a little bit of research, and like I was wondering how many particle accelerators there were, how many cyclotrons there were at CERN, because everyone knows about the Large Hadron Collider, the LHC. And when I was doing research on this about a week ago, it said that there were 10 particle accelerators. However, now today I go online and it says it has 9 accelerators and 2 decelerators. So already, like, I have to compare the names of the accelerators to the list that I put up, because that was the list I got.
Yeah.
Yeah. So which one is different?
Which one's gone? Yeah.
Yeah. So when I go to the CERN site, there's the LHC,
Right.
there's the LINAC 4 and the LINAC 3. So yeah,
Mhm.
number 7 is the LINAC 3, number 5 is the LINAC 4. There's the PS booster, LIER, L-I-E-R, okay. The super proton synchrotron, okay, that's there. The HIE isolide, is that on there too?
Yeah, number 9.
Number 9.
We got clear.
10.
Number 10.
Number 10.
The proton synchrotron.
That's
Number 2.
Number 2. The anti-proton, the decelerator. Sorry, that's different. And then Elena.
That's not on there.
That's weird. Okay, there's all, like, either the CERN site's got all kinds of conflicting information, or it depends on. There's a lot going on here. It's hard to keep track of what's going on. And what does this mean? Like, that there's more particle accelerators than what people remember, and that the accelerators are different. And I got to look into what this Elena one is, because I don't.
And that there are 2 decelerators. So I've followed CERN for a while, and why are they decelerating particles? What is their plan? They speed them up to the speed of light and they smack them into each other. They don't slow them back down. Like, that was never a thing. You know what I mean? Like, you get them going really fast and then you smash them. That was kind of the point.
So I'm confused here. So we have actually 2 different ones, because you listed 9 and one of them aren't on this list. So that means that the Elena is new, but also there's another one that wasn't on the list then, right?
The last 2 might have been the decelerators, possibly.
Did you say clear? Oh, okay. I don't know.
Yeah, he said
after
clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you've got their Project Atlas, which is actually studies the detects and studies what comes through the beams. So none of us here are experts at CERN. So, like,
all right.
but we do know when the logo changes, And we do know when the information that's presented to us keeps changing as well. So again, it's like something weird's going on. And when CERN said they invented the internet or the World Wide Web, that raised some red flags for me right away. I'm like, no, you didn't. But they were able to actually bring that into the timeline where they were the ones that were responsible for that. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Well, let me confirm, Chris. This logo, this isn't a new one they've put out. They haven't rebranded themselves, right? This is the way it's always been, right?
Since 1968. Yeah, what's interesting too.
You mean
like
since
Jerry,
3 weeks ago, but yeah, since 1968. New, old new.
yeah, and Jerry and I were talking about like how many of these cyclotrons, particle accelerators, are there around the world? And the research I had done showed that there was like 1,500 of them. I checked, and now there's 30,000 of them. But Jerry, you've known about that for a while, right?
Yes, sir. At least a couple of years in the research that I was doing, I found that a couple of years ago that there was approximately 30,000. When I did the sorry about that. When I did the video for thank you for the theory on CERN, I went and did the research. This is back in 2017, 2018. So it's been a few years now. And that's when I found the 30,000 around the world. And of course, I can make sense of that with colleges and the fact that you don't have to have very big space to have a technical particle accelerator. It doesn't necessarily have to be, the size of 3 countries. But yeah, I remember that number. Now, this is fascinating that I found that data way back, and then your research turned up a different amount of data in the in-between.
Absolutely. Right? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I've created videos where I've stated that number of 1,500. I'll have to go back and look at my videos and see if I still say that. Seriously.
And now it's over 30,000 again, and you're 30, finding that information. So that is fascinating. The numbers themselves, because I don't go back and look. Once I learned that information, I've learned information. I'm not going to keep revalidating, though in Mandela Effect we now should, that same information that I knew I'd seen, right? But in that interim, it gives it time to change, because I wouldn't have known if it did, because I'm not going back and re-referencing that information again, because I assume I know what it is, whether it still remains that or not. Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating how that could happen.
Yeah, in this reality, so CERN is doing a lot more experimentation, at the very least, involved in how the reality works and their search for these different particles. And then it goes into other things as well, what could be going on there. And then there's more. In the next slide, we talk more about CERN. This isn't our only CERN slide.
I was going to say that isn't even all the craziness going on. Next slide, please. There's a statue at the front of CERN. We all know the Shiva statue. However, is it different than you remember? What's different here, Chris?
Yeah, so for me, what was different are those bands coming out of Shiva's head, and also the long flowing belt, and also how Shiva now stands on this dwarf called Apis Mara, which is a symbol of human ignorance. Interesting. So I don't remember the dwarf. I don't remember the belt ribbon thing coming out, and I don't remember those bands coming out of her head. So I don't know if that's true, if that's the same for anyone else.
Yeah, this is different.
A lot of it looks weird.
Dwarf.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I remember. Okay, this is going to sound odd, perhaps, but I remember there were more arms. I don't know why, but instead of the belt thing and all of the busy stuff behind the head, I remember there were like I don't know why, but there were like 6 arms, 3 on each side. And I know that's bizarre. I haven't seen anybody else mentioning that, but that's strangely what I remember. Nothing about this standing on a dwarf of human ignorance. And so I remember it was a little busy, but there were more arms. Does anyone else remember extra arms, or is that just
I second the extra arms. Yes, 110%. I don't remember the whole like snakes on the head dress there, but I do
No.
remember the extra arms. I also don't remember the karate belt extending all the way to the ring, but
No.
yeah, definitely remember extra arms. Also, yeah, I'm with you, Cynthia. I don't remember the dwarf being the footstool for Shiva. I think that would have been a big thing way back if that was a thing. I'm just saying, like that would have been like totally pointed out, at least by our community, as being odd, if nothing else.
Yes.
Yeah, and how that dwarf statue that he's standing on or she's standing on represents human ignorance. And it reminds me of like that ceremony that was somewhat related to this at the Gothenburg Tunnel, where there was a lot of symbology that all goes back to human ignorance, the elites versus the regular human population, and what the elites know versus what a regular person might know. So yeah, so that all go, I think, to show their like kind of superiority, like they know about how the reality works, whereas most of mankind is just totally in the dark. They think this is all just
Helen
holographic.
Skygazer says maybe even 6 arms. Hannah Gallagher, I remember 6 arms. So a lot of people there with the 6. Sorry, Chris, I wasn't trying to cut you off. I thought you were done speaking. My apologies.
Yeah, no, not a problem. I even forget what I was saying, so it's all good.
Yes, those and nobody also remembers the standing on a dwarf either, right? Because
I remember standing on that
you do
character, but I didn't know what it was, but I definitely remember a character. But I'm with you guys. It seemed like it was like 3 arms on each side. I don't remember that belt going out. I don't remember that grid on the head. What the heck? There was nothing like that up there. It was just like 6 arms, the one leg kind of kicking out and then the other leg down on top of that thing. I remember that. And I'm not really sure about the ring. It seems like those things coming out might have been different.
Yeah.
Like representing different things rather than, gosh, I don't know. I remember really looking at it, and this doesn't seem familiar at all. And I was looking at this exact statue at CERN, so I know it ain't like I just happened to come across a different statue, but I feel like I'm looking at
a random
this for the first
version
time.
of.
Right. It's not like the Thinker where there's a bunch of them around and I just happened to look at a different one. This is for sure the one I looked at. Wow. That's a wild one.
And we've seen a number of changes coming in with Shiva over and over. Like this isn't the first time Shiva's been brought into question. As a matter of fact, Eva, who's done talks with the IMEC, Once Upon a Timeline YouTube channel, she's pointed out for a long time, she's got a couple pictures she pulls up over and over and over how Shiva has been morphing over the years through different effects, subtle here, subtle change there, subtle change here. So she's been following this for quite a while. So really, really interesting. We're seeing these major changes coming in now.
Yes.
Yeah, the reality's filling in with all of these details. Yeah, we see that all over the place with all these big Mandela effects.
Speaking of filling in, apparently our atmosphere is filling in to stand by. Shane, go ahead.
I was going to say, Brooke said in the chat, Miranda, it's like she's too much to the side. And that kind of reminds me of the Thinker, how he sort of shifted off to one side where he was really kind of solid and symmetrical at first and, balanced on both legs. And now he switched to one side. And that did seem weird too. It seemed like it was heavy to one side like that. And I remember the leg going off, but not all the extra. Even the arms, the 2 arms are doing something weird. And I'm also wondering if we were looking at it from the back. But yeah, we can go to the next one. Just wanted to bring the chat in.
Absolutely. Pollen corona. So pollen corona is an optical phenomenon that occurs when sunlight or moonlight diffracts through a swarm of pollen grains. Apparently, this happens a lot with pine trees. They can be multicolored, violet or blue, green, or even yellow. I don't know. Maybe this is the hazy sunsets we've seen and don't realize what we're looking at sometimes. I don't really think I've heard of a pollen corona before, though.
Yeah, I never heard of it either. I saw there was an article about it, I think on spaceweather.com a while ago. And I was like, pollen coronas. Like, I didn't hear about that. Like, oh, here's the latest picture of pollen coronas from the Netherlands, wherever that picture was taken. I don't remember. So yeah, caused primarily by pine trees. So that's interesting. New for me.
That's totally new for me too.
Shane?
Yep, definitely new for me. I was going to check the chat and see if we got anybody that remembers it. Nope, never heard of pollen corona, says Miranda.
It's interesting to look at the pine trees because I've been following the work of someone on Twitter who's creating water glass. He's recreating ancient gigantic stones of the sort that were like before. It's like prehistoric. So going back to the ancient Egyptian and to all around the world, these ancient huge stone um, blocks, and pine trees are part of that because the way he's doing it is using ancient technology as they would have access to thousands of years ago to work with natron, water glass, and then little scrapings of stones so that you don't have to transport a stone that weighs um, 10 or 20 tons, but instead you can form it in place. So pine trees are part of that because they're what would be burned in large quantity in order to create the water glass. So it's interesting that pine trees are coming into my attention. We were talking about pine cones too, that little pine cone looking device.
And the pineal gland, who was, I think Helen mentioned that in the chat earlier.
So there's a pine connection,
Mm-hmm.
big time.
Well, at least it's pine trees and not pining for a different reality, right? So from the sky to the sea, ladies and gentlemen, our next slide here has the black coral, also known as Antipitherians. Woohoo! I'm so proud of myself I said that. Can be found in every ocean, from shallow waters to the deepest depths. Shane, you know anything about this? Chris, Cynthia, what do you guys got?
This is not from my reality.
Not from
You know what's interesting about this too is you can get jewelry that's black coral jewelry, and I didn't even know that was. I didn't know black coral was a thing, let alone jewelry that they make out of it. So I always thought coral was like white, in my old reality. So
Yeah, I know coral comes in colors, and I know that, and we have black sand beaches in Hawaii and around the world. But it seems like white sand is the predominant color because the coral gets bleached when it gets exposed to the sun when it dies off. So this is strange. I don't really remember that I don't remember black coral being dominant. That's very new to me. That part's new. I remember that there was some, but now it's become dominant, and that's
in Hawaii,
okay. Just in
yeah,
Hawaii.
a dominant feature of Hawaii's deep coral reefs. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, just another part of the reality that for a lot of us just didn't exist before.
So these are the chitin skeletons we're looking at, the black, and they're surrounded by their colored polyps, part of the coral that's alive. So maybe I think I've seen the colored parts and I haven't seen them dyed off and looking like the skeleton's all black. So it's interesting.
Red Shadow in the chat says, coral was always red to me, at least in jewelry. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I think I remember reddish colored.
I've never seen a black coral before. That is definitely a new one on me. A matter of fact, I thought when they turned black that they were dying and in bad shape, right? Like that they were about to go. Like black coral was a bad sign, I thought, in an ecosystem. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, but this is saying that the jet black is the skeleton. So that would be if it's dead.
Well, Rose says, never seen black coral, usually bright pink, red, or white. That's what she remembers.
Huh. Yeah, this is definitely new to me.
That's odd. Yeah.
Looks cool,
though. Speaking of the ocean, we've got another really interesting Mandela effect here. kind of a personal Mandela effect for one of our very own team members here. Next slide, please. Chris, tell us about the Trunk Bay mystery.
Oh yeah. So for me, this is a big personal one. If anyone else has ever been to Trunk Bay in the U.S. Virgin Islands, St. John is where it's located. There was always this iconic palm tree that hung over the sand beach, and there were so many photos of it. And I would see it all the time. And I've been going to like St. John since the early 90s. So I've been there a lot. I've probably been there like 15 or 20 times. And when I recently went this year, I'm looking for the palm tree and it's not there. And I'm like, where's the palm tree that I would always see all the time? And then, I started looking online to try to find pictures of it. I couldn't find any pictures of it. I found a picture of a postcard kind of showing like that palm. So that's kind of like maybe a kind of residue about it. And then there is a stretch of the beach where there is like another palm that's similar to that hanging over, but it's all the way on one side of the beach. And it's a skinny little palm. The palm that I remember was like thick. It was like there for a long time, and it was kind of like right in the center. So for me, I was like looking for the palm, couldn't find it. And then I can't find any pictures of it. I kept scrolling and scrolling. And the only thing I could find are like a postcard that had it, or this little skinny palm that was similar to the concept, but different. It wasn't the same one. So I don't know if anyone else has been to Trunk Bay or has seen those iconic pictures of it. So
it's
I
always
definitely
something
remember the
iconic.
pictures. Yeah.
Right. Same here. It's always something iconic. I remember the pictures too, Shane. Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing too about the island of St. John that was never there before is all the seaweed. So there's from the Sargasso Sea, which for me is a new thing. It's a sea in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. The Sargasso, I think they call it, comes down. I think Trunk Bay gets spared, but a lot of the other beaches on St. John all get the seaweed. A lot of the other islands get it. It all goes down into the Mexico beaches. It kind of makes the beaches kind of gross, and they're always like raking it up and trying to get rid of it as quickly as possible. So that was another feature for me that was different about that, showing to me that I'm definitely on a different in different reality.
So for you, the Sargasso Sea itself is new? Because I studied that in the 1980s. It was part of where they used to wonder where the little sea turtles went when they were hatched. They come out of their eggs, they climb down off the sand, they go into the ocean. Then where do they go? And so I was taking a class, Islands and Oceans, and at UC Berkeley, and it explained they go to the Sargasso Sea. They live in the seaweed that floats on top of the ocean, and then they grow up there where it's relatively safe, and then later, when they're much bigger, that's the mystery of where do the turtles go. So I was studying that, so I knew about the Sargasso Sea, but I never heard that it got gross on the beaches. So is that part new, or is the whole thing new?
See, that part's new, as well as the history now with Christopher Columbus and the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. They went through the Sargasso Sea, and the way the story goes now is that all the sailors were afraid because they thought the ships were going to run aground, because they thought that much seaweed, there had to be, they were in shallow waters all of a sudden. They weren't sure where they're going to hit land. So that's a whole big thing about the journey of Columbus coming to the Americas, so that I had never heard bore as well. So
that's new to me too.
And
wow.
the whole area where the Sargasso Sea is also related to Bermuda, the Bermuda Triangle. And when I tune into it, one of the falls of Atlantis happened in that area. So again, very interesting puzzle pieces. What is the Sargasso Sea? What is its importance? And why is there seaweed on all these beautiful beaches?
Well, it sure got our attention. We're looking at it.
Speaking of beaches, in World War II, there was a lot of beach storming going on, we know, and apparently there's been a little bit of change, at least to what people remember. The invasion of Poland, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know how much you guys know about that, but apparently in this timeline, it was a joint invasion by Germany and the Soviet Union. Wait a second. Germany and the Soviet, I thought they were not friends, especially at this time. Yet they're working together to invade Poland. I am seriously confused here. After becoming aware of this, Emmy, a few weeks ago, there's now a third country involved called the Slavic Republic, which was part of Czechoslovakia from 1939 to 1945. Chris, you did the slide deck this time. I'm going to go ahead and refer to you.
Yeah, so I think everyone knows that the Germans and the Russians weren't the best of friends
At all.
Yeah, so now we have them both invading Poland in a joint force together. So yeah, so to me this is like totally new. I've never heard of the Russians working, with the Germans at that time. And then later on, you keep following the history, and all of a sudden, Russia and Germany, as the war goes on, now they become bitter enemies again. But at the beginning, they weren't. So again, we have all these Mandela effects related to World War II, related to the Nazis, related to their penetration to the East Coast, with their submarines and so forth. Off the coast of Connecticut, where I am, there are over 5,000 people that were killed from ships that German U-boats would fire their torpedoes out and sink the ships. So like all of that, a lot of us remember all of that history going on and how that history has changed that we don't remember, and how they formed these the groups that went out, the private groups, the yachts that would go out and look for the German U-boats. I forget the name of that.
Dazzle Fleet, or
you're thinking about the Razzle Dazzle.
yeah, the Razzle. Okay.
No, the group of guys, the retired guys that would just go out in sailboats.
Yeah, exactly. And Ernest Hemingway,
like a name like the Hoodlums or the Hooligans, or
yeah, exactly. Hooligan Navy. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. That's what it was. Yeah. So you got the Hooligan Navy, people with the private yachts going out looking for U-boats off the East Coast. Yeah. So we've got all this history that's changing before our eyes. So I wonder what else is in store.
Well, Helen in the chat says, Helen Skygazer says, nope, they were not friends. Germany was the only country who invaded Poland at first. So she remembers it like you do. And actually, Helen, aren't you over there? And I think you're in the UK, aren't you? Or in Europe somewhere?
She is.
Yeah.
Red Shadows, I thought it was Germany with Austria and Hungary. See, that sounds right to me.
Yeah, I don't know myself.
Germany, Austria, and Hungary invading Poland. Like, that sounds like the history I remember.
Ian, what is a Slavic Republic?
God, I've never heard of. What is that?
No, because if you go to like the global narrative, go to Wikipedia, it actually says that the Slavic Republic was also involved. So it was three countries. And at that time, from 1939 to 1945, that area broke away from Czechoslovakia. So it's getting interesting.
So they also supposedly invaded Germany Poland along with Germany and Russia.
Yeah.
Like what?
Exactly.
That's totally new for me.
That's strange, to say the least.
Yes.
Because like I said, those two countries were famously not friends, let alone working together in a military campaign like that. That's totally new for me. Also new for me would be the original currency of the United States. What was the original currency of the United States?
Well,
would you believe me if I told you? Go ahead.
No, go ahead. It was wild.
Would you believe if I told you it was invented or designed by Ben Franklin and was issued in 1776? I didn't know we had our own coinage that early in American history.
This is totally new for me.
Mind your business on one side and we are one on the other. Love that.
That's exactly where I was headed too. I love what it says on there, right? Not to speak too much about it, but given the current climate, I think it's really funny and interesting that we find this in history now as something that I don't remember. I don't remember this being a coin that collectors are looking for. And I remember this being a rare coin thing. I've never heard of this spoken of before.
It's got the 13 colonies and the circles on the outer edge on one side. I guess you can see it on both of them. If you zoom in, I guess.
And if you have one of these, one of them sold for $1.4 million. So, and they said when they first came out in 1776, there wasn't like a value put on it. It wasn't until later in 1787, it came out as a penny. So
Well, I think there was a silver version, brass version, and pewter. So the coin experts, it's like it just popped into reality. So even the new what do you call it? Numismatists.
Numismatist.
Thank you. The coin experts, they're not sure exactly what the denominations were because it wasn't printed on the coins. It didn't say. So people must have known what they were. How about the chat? Have people heard of this before? Totally new for me.
Red Shadow says, new to me. Gypsy JJ, never seen this either. Up to Brooke Michelle says, new to me. That's all I see so far. But yeah, apparently the chat doesn't recognize it either.
I like
Listen,
it.
My uncle is an avid coin collector. I've admired his collection for years. This is totally new for me.
That mind your business is cool because it's reminding people just focus on your own stuff. You don't need to get into other people's business. Very, very good tip from Ben Franklin. And then we are one, just recognizing let's pull together. We got 13 colonies, but we can overcome the differences and recognize that together we're greater. So that's really cool too.
Isn't it interesting too how a lot of people seem to remember Benjamin Franklin being a president?
They do?
Yeah.
A lot of people do.
They do. And like how, our currency is made of dead presidents, they say. How did Benjamin Franklin get on the $100 bill if he wasn't a president? How did he sneak on? Right. So yeah, now I personally don't remember him being a president, but I've talked to people that like swear that they were taught that he was a president. So perhaps another timeline he was.
Maybe we're too.
He helped write the documents and signed all the documents, but I don't remember him being a president.
I thought of him as a founding father, but that's a good point. He's on a $100 bill. Was there somebody else too? I think
that's on the dollar. That's on a currency that wasn't a president.
Yeah.
Is that the question?
Yeah. I thought there might have been another founding father that was never president, but I could be wrong.
I think there's Sacagawea.
Yeah, John Hancock.
Yeah. Oh, really?
You put your John Hancock on everything. That's the biggest signature on the Constitution or Declaration of Independence, whatever. But he was never president.
Oh, okay.
Right.
That must be who I was thinking of. But I'd go to Ben Franklin. Wasn't that the 5 and dime store or whatever? So I remember my mom saying that's not a president or whatever, and thinking it was.
I don't.
Benjamin Franklin.
I don't know. Maybe we'll have to look it up in Overmorrow.
Overmorrow.
I love this one. We got to start using this one a little bit more.
Next slide, please. Ladies and gentlemen, Overmorrow. We were just joking about here. Believe it or not, that is not a word we made up. No. Overmorrow is an archaic term that refers to the day after tomorrow. So maybe they should have named the movie Overmorrow instead of Day After Tomorrow. Maybe it probably wouldn't have had such a name, would it?
That would have solved
it. Rarely used in modern English, as the more common term is simply the day after tomorrow. I think we need to bring this back, guys. I don't remember this ever being a word, by the way. This is total Mandela effect for me. But Overmorrow, like what?
It's new for me.
Have you ever heard of this term? New for you?
No. Yeah, when I saw it, it just popped out. Like this would be simpler than saying the day after tomorrow. Saves a lot of space if you're putting something together. So I would think this would have stayed in common usage if it was really there before. So it seems like reality itself would suggest that this popped in from out of nowhere.
I
So
would agree
in
with,
other words, a Mandela effect, clearly.
I would agree with that. I've never heard this term before.
Iam or Iam in the chat says it's close to the Dutch Overmorgen.
Hmm.
So that's interesting. Overmorrow. So we will definitely be doing some research overmorrow.
Yeah, and there's a lot.
Maybe
of,
we'll be. Go ahead.
I was going to say, like, if you're ever like typing of a document and you're using a spell checker, there's a lot of words that I swear are totally different, like and how they're like broken apart. Like, for example, every time, I remember that being one word every time, but now every time is two words.
A
And
lot.
then, I'm sorry?
A lot.
A lot. Okay. Yeah. So there's a lot of like, and that goes to make sense. It would make sense with all these Mandela effects. It would actually go to the linguistics and the words that we use. So yeah, new words like overmorrow or how words are spelled or broken apart is changing. So thank God there's a spell checker, so I know what reality I'm in. I could always make sure.
Do me a favor, Chris. Spell the word judgment for me.
Judgment.
So I typed that into my document that I was writing the other day, and it corrected me and took the middle E out of it altogether. It's Judgment.
Oh my God, you're right. I'm looking at it online. There's no more E in
it. Just looks so foreign.
Oh, that's different.
That one gets
Oh my
me
God.
all the time too. Yeah.
I'm not judging, but I'm going to judge judgment. That's not the way it was. Ooh.
I was muted. I was going to say the Terminator movie Judgment Day looks funny without the E now. I was like, wait. What?
Wait.
Yeah,
Wait.
if you pull up Terminator Judgment Day, it looks so wrong. Oh my God.
Same here, Brooke Michelle.
I noticed it on the bus first. There was an advertisement for an attorney, and I was like, oh, that's so bad. He misspelled judgment. You know what I mean? Said something like bad judgment, call whatever. And I'm like, wait, he left the E out.
Damn. Well, that is crazy. Yeah, I'm looking at Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Like, that looks wrong.
Now, this one changed for me also like 12, 15 years ago. So this one's been a long time messing with me. I'm still not used to the change.
Really? Cool.
Yeah. I still type it wrong, but the spell check usually catches it.
As who was it?
Wrong
Brooke
for this
Michelle
reality.
says she's working on a book. I'm going to assume it's a she. Says they're working on a book. I also am doing the same thing. That's why I was typing into a document. I'm working on something right now, a book project. So I'm going to say about it at the moment, but just in case it fails or I get lazy. But I typed that word in and it blew my mind. Like I was going through the spell check and it said wrong. I said, no, that can't be. And I went over to Google like you did, Chris. Like, no, hold up. What is that? Oh, what? What?
It's a strange one.
Very strange.
Yeah, and even like that word I mentioned every time, like is now two separate words every time. There's like songs and everything where every time is one word. So I know
that
people,
one got me too.
Yeah. So I know people remember it the way I do.
Totally. And over yonder, I do remember over yonder, but not over Morrow. Over Morrow.
Oh yeah, over yonder. I'm from the south. Over yonder is a regular term down here.
Right.
That's directions. What are you talking about? Over yonder way. Yeah, that's where it is. Over yonder way.
There would be there should be a song like over yonder, over Morrow. You know, it's kind of like over there and over into space and time.
Well, remember there was the song I want to shut at that redhead yonder looking at me over yonder. So it's can be used without over yonder, over.
You put it with over Morrow.
Right.
And because I can't think of a good segue, next slide, please.
So you can't think of a colorful segue.
Right. Thank you, Shane. I appreciate that. Very, very colorful indeed. As we spoke of the rainbows earlier, we've got another rainbow here. Rainbow swamps, ladies and gentlemen. This is supposedly a natural phenomena that occurs when sunlight hits natural oils on still water in swamps and marshes. The oil comes from the decaying vegetation. Not only does it give us methane gas, but apparently oil now too, such as leaves that fall in the autumn and decompose in the water. The water also needs to be undisturbed for a long time for the rainbows to appear. Now, two questions. Number one, chat. Have we covered this before? Because there was a question amongst ourselves whether or not we have covered this. We may have. I'm not sure. Would you guys remember? Second team, do you remember this?
Yes,
Yes and
I
no.
do. I do. Yeah, good answer, Shane. I remember we have covered this before, and it just came really clearly when we were looking at getting the show together today. I thought, wait a minute, I know we've done this, but you guys, except for Shane remembering, said a yes and no. How about you, Chris? Do you remember this?
I don't remember it. That's why I put it in here. I'm like, oh, rainbow swamps. We haven't spoken with that before. But it's funny because like looking at the picture is kind of familiar to me. So
Right.
That's what happened to me. I was like, wait a minute, did we? It was totally weird. So I was totally, no, we didn't cover this before when I was looking through the slides at first. But then today when we discussed it, I started remembering it a little bit. I'm like, wait a minute, did we? I don't know. This is a weird one for me, for sure. I feel like I have a dual memory of this one.
So what's happening in the chat? Anyone else remember it too? Or it's fine either way. There's no
Apparently, we covered it last month.
Last?
No.
There's no way it was last
No
month.
way it was last month. If it was, that's really trippy.
Okay, Liz Beck says, yeah, you covered this one last time. Twice she says that. Last one.
Really?
Wow.
We covered it twice?
I don't think it was last month. It's pretty funny.
I'm pretty
We'll
sure.
have to double check this. That's hilarious. No, I remember it from like about a year ago. More or less.
It would have been included with our color episode then, wouldn't it have? That's strange. I don't know. Maybe we did.
So I'm not sure what the main Mandela effect here is, whether the rainbow swamps exist or whether we've covered it already or not.
So both, actually. So I'm like, I've never heard of this before, but on the other hand, yes, I remember us covering it and not covering it. So. But it's still new to me for some reason. So.
I just did a scan. I just did a scan of all of our PowerPoints. Yes. I just look for the word rainbow swamp, and the only thing that's coming up is this one.
Oh, wow.
Very cool.
From what I can see on my computer, from all of our other PowerPoints. So
good idea.
Oh, that's wild, ladies and gentlemen. Maybe we just had our head in the clouds at some point, right? Next slide, please. This one you might actually be able to reach. It looks like it's quite low to the ground. This is a stratocumulus volutus or volutus, or I'm not sure I'm even saying the word right, so bear with me, folks. It is a rare species. I don't know when clouds gain species. That's a new one. Of stratocumulus cloud, typically forming alone. They are not severe and may only bring several minutes of rain. And it looks like you could literally have your head in the cloud with this one. It's a Mandela loop, says Rose. Have you guys ever seen anything like this?
Rolling pin.
It looks like an AI picture, honestly. I know it isn't, but that's how crazy this is to me. This is wild.
Well, I have to say, I've never seen it before until I started watching Mr. MBB 333's YouTube channel where people send in a lot of photos like this. So I've seen it on there, but that's just been in the last few years. Certainly never with my own eyes. That's wild.
So this isn't an AI picture. Then like you said, MBB has shown this on his channel with people like taking pictures themselves, sending it into him.
Yeah.
Just to be clear.
Yeah. That's another YouTuber.
I was going to say, like, when it comes to these Mandela effects and clouds, we've spotted a lot of different types of cloud structures. Now,
Yes.
I just did a check here. The last time I would check for how many different types of clouds are there, the number was always in the 30s. Now it says there are almost 100 different types of clouds, but they can be
Whoa.
grouped into 10 main types because of their height and general shape. But still 100 different types of clouds, I don't ever remember coming across that many different types of clouds before.
Seems like it's, for me, it was like about a dozen or so. And then when I saw that, I'm like, man, there's a few here I don't remember.
Well, apparently, Chris, there are many different species of clouds now, like they're animals of some type.
Yeah,
I'm
there's
just looking it up
That
too.
throws me
Yeah.
off.
Got an image. I was just looking up what they are. I remember above fog, there used to be strato. Now there's like 4 different categories in this low range. And the mid range has 3 different categories. And then there's like 4 on the top. Now
Oh.
you're saying there's a lot more than these 10. This is huge. I mean, it's been increasing, and it's going nuts lately. I agree with you, Chris. This is very interesting.
It reminds me of what I recently came across. I don't know if we covered this on a previous show, but like there's a line in the Atlantic and Pacific Ocean where they meet. Have you guys seen that?
Yes, and
Yes.
the colors are different. Like
Have we
different
talked
colors
about
of
that?
water.
On the show yet?
I don't think so.
Anyway, that's interesting. Maybe we should cover that. But that's new to me, that there's a line in the ocean separating. It's like,
It's new to me
I don't
too.
know.
You can actually see it where they meet.
Yeah, it looks more brown and it's a line. The guy was taking water samples out of his boat of each side, and just strange.
Wait, where
Really
would this location be?
I guess it's down by the tip of South America, maybe? Is that
Oh, okay. Down by Drake's Passage.
like where it
and that?
goes from Atlantic to Pacific right there? Yeah.
Okay, that would make sense. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's really crazy. Anyway, sorry.
The salinity of the water doesn't allow them to, or the I guess the weight of the water or something doesn't allow them to mix. So
That's what they say.
they don't.
But it's strange, because water seems like if it's water, it mixes.
Yeah. This is weird.
And weird is what we do best. Next slide, please. Ladies and gentlemen, do you have questions for us about this episode, about anything we've talked about in this episode? Go ahead and put your questions in the chat now, as we've got a couple to start with, but we're definitely looking forward to any you may have. We have people on standby watching to make sure they grab any questions that you may have. Moving along, like I said, we've got a couple questions to start with, and we got a couple for different people across the team here. Next slide, please. A question for Shane. Because of your familiarity with the Bible, I personally cannot say whether this may be a Mandela effect or not. Do you recall when Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane, was there a little boy with him who runs away when some soldiers confront Jesus?
Wow, so I don't remember reading that, but hearing you say that totally sounds familiar. So now I'm wondering if maybe we watched some kind of show that kind of added that, but maybe it was never in the Bible. I can't be for sure, to be honest with you, but that I can totally remember the little boy running away and all that, but I can't be sure. I don't remember it from a show as one of those mini series or something about Jesus when I was a kid. It could be that, because I can totally picture it. So I'm not sure if I read it or saw it somewhere. But I'm with you, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I was going to say I remember that part of that story, and then the boy runs off. But yeah, I definitely have a memory of remembering that.
Yeah,
I haven't researched this. I don't know. Is it still in the Bible, or they're saying it's not there anymore?
No, I don't remember it since I was a kid. It's an old memory for me. So I know I haven't read it since I was reading the Bible as an adult, but it could have been Mandela affected a long time ago. I know some other ones have been that people have noticed. So you just never know with these. And then it could happen at different times for different people. That's the other strange thing. Just never know. Anyone else, Cynthia or Jerry, do you guys remember?
I was just looking at the chat. Go ahead, Cynthia.
I don't know. I don't have anything on this one. I'm not sure. But it's interesting.
Oh, okay.
Rose says this is in the Gospel of Mark, but I remember that scene, like when it was mentioned, little boy running away. Like, yeah, that seems very familiar. That sounds right. Yes, I'm not sure, but yeah, that sounds right. Maybe it is in Mark still. Then some think the boy was Mark himself. See, I don't know. When it was brought up, I was like, yeah, that does seem real familiar. So let's go ahead and grab our Bibles, folks, and see if we can see that. In the meantime, we've got some more questions here. Chris, I wonder if things like the name changes are in the Akashic records. Would both versions be found there?
Okay, so this I think is actually a really good question, because it would be more than name changes in the Akashic records, because one of the ways you can visualize like how your consciousness moves through the reality is like branches on a tree, and then how the branches have like smaller branches that branch off, and then leaves off of those branches. So when you're actually looking at the Akashic records, like what are you looking at? Like what timeline are you looking at? And then can the timelines change? So in a past life, could you have made another decision and all of a sudden like things are different? So I believe that when you're looking at the Akashic records, it's something that is very fluid, and you're looking at what the now moment is of what the Akashic records are. But I believe that they can change, just like history can change of a person. Like we know about different people's history or historical events that came into the reality that weren't there before or somehow different. Now we're looking at different timeline versions of that person. So would both versions, like would all the versions be there? I would say probably you could probably tune into all the different versions, but you're really tuning into the one that's most important for what you're looking at. So, but I think it's a good question, and I think it goes very deep as to the way the reality works, that it's not simple and straightforward. It's not just like, I have one Akashic record and it's always going to stay that way forever. So I don't see it happening that way.
Yeah, I agree with Chris, because I think if being that so many different perspectives are there, the subjective reality for each individual person, it would need to contain all of those different versions, right? That's what it seems like to me.
Yeah, it's very deep. It's very complex.
And Chris, carrying on, one more question for you. Are we back to Anatra as it always was for me, or Emmy? I'm not sure what they meant there, or as opposed to Anatra? So I'm going to take partial responsibility here because I've said your name 7 different ways, 15 different ways probably. So don't take Jerry saying the name as the way it's supposed to be. Please, by all means, I will screw it up every time. So don't base it on the way I say it. But Chris, what is the actual pronunciation of your last name again?
Well, it's really not a Mandela effect, because a year or two ago, I started pronouncing it Anatra, like the Italian way of saying it. In the past, it was always Anatra, but in Italian, it's Anatra. So I started saying it that way because it all relates to the name of our script, so to speak. So our script name is the same name that's on our birth certificate. And if you can pronounce it the same way that it's meant to on your birth certificate, it has more meaning. So yeah, about a year or two ago, I started pronouncing it as Anatra. So, but in the past, I did say it as Anatra, which is the way I was brought up to say my last name. And one time I was talking to an Italian, and she's like, don't say Anatra, like you're butchering that. That's the American version. You have to say it like Italiano, Anatra. And she had repeat after me, Anatra. I'm like, okay, I get it. So here I am.
Nice.
And we have another slide of questions. Thank you for clearing that up, Chris. That has actually been a continual question we've had.
Sorry for the confusion.
We get at least one comment a month about the name differential of pronunciation for you. So that's really interesting. Question for anyone experiencing reality shifts. Were you in the hospital right before you started noticing the anomalous changes? Cynthia, I'm going to start with you.
Oh, answer would be no. I haven't really been in the hospital much in my life, knock wood, fortunately. But I have been experiencing anomalous changes most of my life. So I didn't need to go through that. But maybe what this question is I'm going to go a little deeper into the question, and I'm suspecting that they really are kind of poking and prodding around the near-death experience concept. And for that, I do qualify. It was an early childhood based on one of the experts in the field, TMH Atwater said that it counts what I went through when I was age 5, and kind of thinking along the lines of it would be nice to be dead again because I remembered what it was like between lives. So because of that, she said that totally qualifies as a near-death experience. You changed your mental processing at age 5. So I think that does qualify. So I'm just dancing around the question. Wasn't hospitalized, but I did have what has been called equivalent of a near-death experience at a young age. So
A traumatic event, an incredibly traumatic event.
well, it wasn't traumatic. It was more life was traumatic. It's kind of like the elevator doors opened and like you're on Earth, and I thought, oh no, wrong planet, and I'm pushing the buttons like it's not the right planet. A mistake.
Not Earth again, no!
So aside from the original trauma, like, no, this is the right planet. Like, oh man. Aside from that, so not really traumatic.
How about you, Chris? Were you in the hospital or have anything of the sort before noticing the Mandela effect?
I cannot say that I was, no, but the whole concept of a near-death experience definitely is a big change for a lot of people. Absolutely. Especially because when that happens, your higher self can step more in. Something happens so that, yeah, you become more aware of the reality. And you get that higher intelligence that starts to come into you. But I wasn't hospitalized that I remember.
Shane?
I kind of feel like I've thought into this a lot, and I kind of feel like anytime we're faced with something sort of traumatic, whether it's going into the hospital or like the Mandela Effect movie pointed out, he had the loss of his daughter. I think sometimes we're grasping for things that are like, tell me this isn't real or this isn't really happening. And we're sort of like looking around, paying attention to more. And if we see something like that, we're like, oh my gosh, am I dreaming? Am I sleeping? Is this not really? So I think it can be sort of that. You're just sort of in shock about things that's happening, or you're in an unusual place like a hospital bed. It's just got you questioning things and paying more attention. So I don't know. That's why things like that can kind of shake us out of our normal routines, right? And wake us up to other things because we're so focused on maybe making a living or whatever that you don't notice, all the things around us. So.
And I would like to point out these quick, and myself, by the way, I was not in the hospital before finding the Mandela effect. So, unfortunately, that is 4 no's across this board. So, thank you, preliminal for the.
Preliminal. Yeah.
He told me is the specific way it's supposed to be. He said it's supposed to be preliminal. Years ago, he told me that. So,
Very nice.
These all come from different videos, ladies and gentlemen. Feel free to comment underneath each video if you would like. If you have any questions that we didn't cover here, if you think of a question, because we do go back through and we do read our comment sections in YouTube. We do interact as much as possible. And we do grab questions for the shows here, as you see. Our next question comes from the video, The 80s Attack. Why is the Q-man not interested in getting the date his car was stolen to link with the date Mandela died? I already know the date. In fact, all in a group I'm in know the exact date. Very strange searcher. I don't know what this is referencing.
I think it's referencing me when it says Q-man. I'm imagining.
Gotcha.
Yeah, because I had told the story about I had recently bought a 1987.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, and it got stolen, in the Howard Johnson's parking lot off of Interstate 95. And I remember when I was going to look for it, going past where the Howard Johnson was, they had all of the newspaper stands out. Back then, like newspapers is how we got the news, right? And they all had there were riots about, Nelson Mandela dying and so forth. So that was really crystallized into my memory because it was a kind of a traumatic event. Like, I love this car. And all of a sudden, it wasn't in the parking lot, later found out that it was stolen. Blah, blah, blah. So if I could go back in time and find paperwork from 30 plus years ago, I didn't even know. I would not even know how to research that. I know it was about a year after I bought the car. So it was probably in the 1988 era, but I don't know the exact date if I had kept the police records and so forth. But yeah, we're talking 30 plus years ago. So, but if Rick Sanchez could share with the group what he remembers, that would be cool too. to have an exact date that everyone that he knows of like agrees to that date, that would be very interesting.
Absolutely. I'd be interested to find out what that date would be too. Paddock HQ from our chat here today has submitted a question. Looks like a dual question, so we're going to handle this one at a time. Do you think one can know a collective Mandela before it occurs? That's the first question.
Anything that can happen probably will happen. So, I mean, it's probably possible. And it's sounds like a group intention, like it's along the lines of Power of Eight that we might have heard about. There are a lot of researchers delving into, timeline shifts for the collective, for peace, usually. So here I'm thinking about Lynn McTaggart, and she's done some Power of Eight and some intentional, peaceful meditations. And so we do have some history scientifically indicating that when people get together and do this sort of thing, you can actually see the crime rate, for example, decreases in a place where that kind of meditation was taking place. And similarly, if you have a specific focus, like bringing peace to a troubled area in the Middle East or what have you, or any war zone, we've seen very positive results. So if you qualify that that would count as a collective Mandela effect, then I'd say yes, absolutely for the first part. What about you guys?
I don't know. To me, it's an interesting question because considering something like Jiffy Peanut Butter or Berenstain Bears or New Zealand being in the wrong spot, just a standard Mandela effect, right? I don't know. I know that when there is a change and somebody says, it used to be what, I can normally guess what it changed to and from, right? Like whether it be a letter change or whatever. It's like I can pull the information right out, and 9 times out of 10, I'm right, like spot on. I don't know if that's having the information and not knowing it, maybe, getting the download and not installing the download, for lack of better analogies.
Well, what about like the dodo bird coming back? Would you be expecting that? I know Chris is, and I'm sharing that with him. Yeah. Would you join in on that kind of thing?
Yes, 100%. I remember it came back for a short amount of time, or was reported back and then disappeared again as if it had never happened. So that was, there were a couple of us who remember that occurring back then.
When did that happen? Wow.
17 or 18, right in that time frame.
Nice.
I just want to stop you for a second, Jerry, because the dodo bird, Göbekli Tepe, some of those bird figures, archaeologists say that they appear to be a dodo bird. So could there be a pocket universe that is existing where the dodo birds have survived, and could that pocket universe come into our world? So
could those pockets be the flip-flops that we experience in and out of the pockets?
Maybe.
It's really interesting. It's fascinating there. The second, Chris, go ahead. Do you think we can know a collective Mandela effect before it occurs?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I agree with Cynthia. Anything is possible. I like the second part of the question. Like, I definitely would answer that.
All right. So moving to the second part of the question, the part that everybody's biting at the bit appears for asking, are there other practical reasons for Mandela effect besides awareness and or ascension? So besides getting our attention or a sign that we're ascending, what other reasons, practical reasons, could the Mandela effect have to be happening, Cynthia?
Well, besides growth and learning, could be, it seems like it's there. If you count evolutionary growth as part of ascension, then that's happening too, clearly. It seems like we're evolving, our bodies are improving, upgrading, we're getting some of the upgrades we're expecting, like the crystal body upgrade, the light body upgrades that Chris has talked about in his videos and we talk about on our show. But Chris wanted to jump in here. I should let you dive in, Chris.
Yeah, so to me, like the big thing about Mandela effects that I like to tune into is the hidden meanings, because I believe that there's a cause for the Mandela effect, whatever Mandela effect it is, and then in many of them, there's a hidden meaning with a hidden message. So those are the type of things that I like to tune into. So there's a small percentage of Mandela effects, about 5%, which I believe are caused by time travel. And one of them is the missing cornucopia on the fruit of the loom. And I talked about that in the IMEC presentation, about what I tuned into for that. And then a lot of them, they might seem like they're obscure or they don't make any sense, but there's a hidden meaning to it. One of the famous ones I talk about is related to Star Wars, and Darth Vader saying, "No, I'm your father," and everyone remember him saying, "Luke, I'm your father." So it switched to no. So is it N-O or K-N-O-W? Like, "No, I'm your father." And then who said that? It was Anakin Skywalker. And Anakin is a name, Germanic is Anu, which is related to the Anunnaki. So is there a code in there telling people that the Anunnaki are the fathers or the creators of the genetic code that that our avatar is in? So when you start digging deep into these, I believe that there are clues as to the way the reality actually works. Again, more puzzle pieces, and not all kind of way out there. I don't believe that they're random. So I love the whole concept of tuning into them and what they could possibly mean.
That's an interesting point, Chris, that perhaps could garner us some answers. My personal take on a more practical reason opposed to awareness ascension, prophecy. I've said this for quite a while. I really believe a lot of the Mandela effects, if not all of them, are prophetic to some degree, whether it be companies that later on end up with sudden issues, become spotlights in the public for whatever reason, become turned on by certain groups of people like the American people, different versions, different things I've seen over and over and over. We've had a Mandela effect, and then interestingly enough, pop culture on another level has something to do with this, or they get in trouble, or there's always something big with these companies or whatever that have a Mandela effect connected to them. And if I can't find a reason immediately, usually one eventually comes into play. So if we're going end times, if we are in the biblical end times, I really personally think the prophetic nature could be a reason for them. So that's my take on it. Of course, that's just as much conjecture as any of us could give at this point, because there's no solid smoking gun to say this is what it is and there's no other way.
The thing that Chris was touching on briefly was super interesting about time travel, like that, the cornucopia, because some people might not remember that talk you gave or what the point was. I think that's really interesting because when you look at there may be certain contributing factors to some of these. And, you've talked about timeline wars, Chris, like sometimes it's like a tug of war going back and forth. We see things, certain areas of history seem like they're impacted that way. That's interesting too. So when you're looking at meaning and noticing time travel, may not be the kind of message you're looking for, but it's showing something. I'd love if you want to go into that a bit.
About the cornucopia?
Yeah, and the time travel.
Yeah, so just to kind of give the 10,000-foot view of the missing cornucopia. So the cornucopia, a lot of people remember that on the Fruit of the Loom underwear, right? That's like one of the most solid Mandela effects that most people remember. In fact, like when the University of Chicago did their test, the missing cornucopia was one of the things that they had on there. So the cornucopia represents abundance. And the place that the cornucopia is used is with Thanksgiving. You'll see a lot of the Thanksgiving pictures and so forth. There's a cornucopia, and there's the horn of plenty, food coming out of it, and so forth. So that was related. So this was like the missing cornucopia was an effect that happened because of a time travel. And when I was tuning into it, time travel by the United States government that traveled back in time to the 1500s, and they were actually doing things to break contracts with the Indians. And one of the big ones was the Pequot massacre that happened here in Connecticut and so forth. And when that happened, they were removing the abundance, and they were breaking treaties. So as an effect, through a ripple of time, the cornucopia was never part of the Fruit of the Loom underwear, because in the time frame that happened after that, it was, there wasn't the same with the treaties being broken and so forth, there wasn't that same abundance, and how the government became stronger at the expense of the native peoples that lived here first. So again, like you can watch that whole presentation. I get into all the depths of how that works. But yeah, that was one of the examples of a time travel, type thing. The other one was Tank Man in Tiananmen Square in Beijing, I think in 1986 or 1987. Yeah, Tank Man. A lot of people remember him being run over by the tank. In this timeline, he doesn't get run over. He just like climbs on the tank, talks to the driver, and that's the end of the story. But in my old timeline, it was a big thing. He got run over. People were out. The film got smuggled out of China. The world was outraged. How could a government do this to their own citizen? It showed that one man can make a difference. And then I remember China became a democracy. Like I remember that so clearly, in how they modeled their constitution after the United States Constitution. All through the 90s, I was watching the news. I'm like, wow, yeah, you go China. And then in early 2000, I saw some news headline about communist China. And I'm like, communist China? When did they go back to communism? So time travel, Chinese government goes back in time, makes it so that that tank driver doesn't run them over. It completely neuters the whole event, because who cares? Somebody stands in front of a tank and then talks to the tank driver and they walk away. That doesn't do anything. And again, it allowed China to stay a communist country. So that's another example of a Mandela effect that had time travel involved. So,
your talk, I just want to riff on the ending of your talk about the time cops, the invitation that you, if you don't mind mentioning that too. I think that's powerful.
Yeah. So what we wanted to do is like, because a lot of the, you know what, you guys that are attending this, that came to the last one, and I'm sure they're going to be attending this one, you have a lot going on with time. And you may be time travelers, and your lower self, so to speak, may not know that, but you are. And a lot of you, I'm getting all tingly as I'm saying this, a lot of you are involved in what you could call time cops or time authority, or somehow doing with policing the timeline so that there's not complete chaos. Because these timeline wars that have happened throughout history, a lot of people have no idea of going back and forth and timeline war and changing this timeline. And you go back in time before this particular race or civilization discover time travel, and you make it so they don't discover it, but you discover it. And it's like, it goes on and on and on. So there's that type of authority, that polices the timelines. And then it, not just in the third and fourth and fifth dimension, but it goes up into the higher dimensions as well. There are higher dimensional time cops as well, and time authorities to make sure that we stay on the right path, and that all these factions that have gotten this technology, don't use it to their benefit, at the expense of others. And if you think about it, is it possible that even back in the times of Atlantis, they had time travel technology? Is that possible? They were in a very advanced civilization. Or is it possible that in the future we couldn't figure out, future humans couldn't figure it out? But no matter where you are on the timeline and you figure out how to time travel, you can start jumping out all over the place. So yeah, and then that causes timeline paradoxes. And that's what happened in Atlantis. You cause these paradoxes. You change something, and then you don't realize the ripple effect that it has through time. So yeah, so you start talking to me about time and how that works. And I'll just say one more thing. The speed of light. Okay, in Atlantis, they figured out how to change the speed of light. So right now we're told it's 186,000 miles per second. It's constant, right? We're told it's constant. But what if it's not constant? What if there is a way to change the speed of light? You're going to have all kinds of crazy things happen with time, because we're in a holographic light-based reality. It's all about light and how it travels. So
the speed of light, they kept detecting it and measuring it, and they kept coming up with a wide range of measurements. So they finally decided to fix the speed of light. So that's what they did. They fixed it to a number and called it a constant.
Oh, is that what they did? Okay. Yeah.
So is it the average speed of light? Is that what they went with?
Yeah. An average among all the numbers they found. Instead of determining that it's variable and working off the real data, we'll just fix the problem and be done with it.
Well, did it align with, how the base of the Great Pyramid is supposed to I don't know, you're supposed to be able to decode the speed of light and the circumference of the earth and all this sort of stuff out of the
It probably aligned with it, and that's probably done on purpose.
right.
I say probably. So probably. They being, I can't remember the name of the exact, that's why I said they. Something like the Institute of Standards or something to that effect. See, this Institute of Scientific Standard or Standards and Measurement, whoever they are. I don't want to like misquote the name of the association, but that's who the they is in this particular case.
You know, I'll just add one more thing to this. So in this Act 11 Mechanics of the Matrix video that I'm going to be releasing at the end of August, please, Heather, please. She does my video editing. One of the things I feature is an episode of Star Trek, The Next Generation, about the Mannheim effect, where there was this Professor Mannheim that was doing time and gravity experiments, and it was causing time to get all wonky. And that as soon as I saw that, and somebody on my channel brought that to my attention, as soon as I saw that, it reminded me of what was happening in Atlantis. So if someone wants to like go into YouTube and type in Star Trek Mannheim effect, Mannheim Manheim effect, you'll see what I'm talking about. But time is super interesting because right now we're used to linear time going up to 60 frames per second, and when that changes, we get completely disoriented. Let alone coming into this reality, coming from no time or the eternal now time. You ask somebody what time it is on the other side of this reality, and they'll say now. You ask them again, they'll say it's now. Everything is the now time. Everything is the now moment. And we're just like, we're different. And it's hard when we come into this reality to get used to linear time. So yeah, time is a fascinating subject for me.
Yeah, that's why I think like when we talk about changing, I'm sorry, I just want to interject real quick about, you know, making changes and being timeline cops and changing things by our intentions. It's almost like you step outside of time. You move up into your higher self and sort of direct things from an area that can't be manipulated. That's why it appears to always have been that way, right? So I think when we're making changes with our intentions, we're actually affecting reality itself and consciousness itself.
Yes, absolutely. And it can be huge, sweeping changes. So it's good to notice, learn from things of the past, lessons of the past, the chaos of Atlantis, for example. So hopefully we can work together so that we don't create that kind of chaos going forward.
And not forget the golden age of Atlantis, because Atlantis had a serious renaissance, a serious golden age. And they even say the founding fathers back in 1776, this was supposed to be like New Atlantis. So there's that whole concept as well. So, you know, obviously things didn't go as planned, you know, but that was also one of the concepts, is to bring back that golden age that Atlantis had.
Beautiful.
Love it.
And I think now is the time to move on to our sponsors for this amazing episode, if you will, our Mandanimal friends. I think we're going to stop calling them sponsors. I think we agreed to. The southern right whale dolphin, ladies and gentlemen. There are currently 49 different species of dolphin and porpoise. The southern right whale dolphin is a small and slender species found in the cool waters of the Southern Ocean. It's one of two of the right whale dolphin. This genus is characterized by lack of dorsal fin, and that looks so strange to see a fish without that top fin on it.
Very strange.
Very strange. Like, that's a dolphin. It's beautiful, right?
Yeah, it's so beautiful, but it does look different.
Majestic, even.
Now, some people have noticed this since 2017. Like, I posted this to a Facebook group, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we knew about this back in 2017," but I didn't. And I had been like looking into dolphin species for a while, and one of my videos talked about dolphins. And back then there was like 32 dolphin species. Now there's 49. Even when I was reading the description at the bottom, it says they're often seen associating with dusky and hourglass dolphins and pilot whales. What's a dusky dolphin? What's an hourglass dolphin? Like, again, those are like, I never.
I was
heard of
hoping you knew that, Chris.
those. Yeah, no, I don't. I think they look like this kind of dolphin, but
And unicorns.
it's just like just all the
I
different.
know. I've not
animals.
heard of dusky or hourglass.
No. I know, it's beautiful though.
Really beautiful.
Much more beautiful than our next creature up for grabs, ladies and gentlemen. Excuse me, the giant or bumphead sunfish. Now, I know we've covered one sunfish here, but this guy definitely doesn't look like anything As a matter of fact, this looks like a science experiment gone horribly wrong. These beautiful giants, okay, the use of the word beautiful can be used very lightly here, go to more than 3 meters and over 2,000 kilograms. Sunfish are found worldwide in the open ocean of tropic and temperate seas. It can be found basking on its side, occasionally near the surface, which is thought to be used to reheat themselves after diving in cold water for prey, recharge their oxygen stores, and attract gulls to free them of parasites. So this has a whole ecosystem in, of, and around itself, it seems like. Interesting find here, Chris. What do you got on this?
Yeah, so that was the whole thing. Like, we did talk about sunfish before. I forget what the context was, but these giant. I think someone sent us this. I think one of the subscribers, viewers to our channel, sent this to us, and I looked into it, and I'm like, I do not remember this giant or bumphead sunfish, especially it being so huge. So I had to include this as a possible manned animal. Add it to the list.
Is that its
And this one
eye, or is that a nose? I can't even tell
Yeah.
what I'm looking at here.
Yeah, is it winking at us or?
Right?
Not sure.
What were you saying, Cynthia?
Well, this is another one I think we did. I think I remember we covered one in Oregon. It was also giant, but I don't remember why. And so it's interesting. We've got the rainbow swamp and we've got a giant sunfish that are both familiar to me. So, but it might just be me. And this is one of those Mandela Effect things. You can sometimes remember that we did something that we didn't do. So, not sure. A little interesting here.
It's a white sun.
Yes. It's a white sunfish. But this is beautiful. It's huge. It's strange. And I now understand why it's called a sunfish, because it suns itself at the surface of the water. That's always been kind of mysterious. Like, why would they call this a sunfish?
Oh, that makes more sense.
Yes.
I didn't know it either, Cynthia, until you just pointed it out. That tracks. That makes a lot more sense.
And we did not cover that before. If we did cover this before. So, I don't know if people remember.
Speaking
in
of the
chat.
sun,
Mhm.
there's actually a plant out there that does not need the sun. Yeah, you guys heard that right. There's a plant that does not need the sun. It's called the Monotropa uniflora, also known as ghost plant, ghost pipe, or Indian pipe. It's a herbaceous perennial flowering plant native to the temperate regions of Asia, North America, and northern South America. Ladies and gentlemen, this is in the United States. Indian pipes. Okay, I have a note from our producer here to add here in just a moment. Indian pipes are unusual in that they do not photosynthesize. Instead, they are mycocentropic. I really hope I spelled that right or pronounced that right. Probably not. Mycoheterotrophic, whatever that word is, meaning they obtain nutrients by parasitizing. Okay, who's putting these words in here? Are you messing with Jerry on purpose? Who wrote this? Parasitizing a type of fungi that associate with plant roots. So let's put this into general English. These things don't use the sun to do photosynthesis. Now, like I said, I have a little bit of extra information coming from our amazing producer and resident herbalist, She said, if I may add, ghost pipe is a sacred plant, so herbalists and foragers don't typically pick it, but ask it energetically for its healing power. That's fascinating. That sounds like something right up Cynthia Sue Larson's aisle. While it is a powerful analgesic pain reliever, is known best for spiritual healing, especially with spiritual pain. It's a symbol of spiritual death and rebirth. Just finding it in the wild can be your medicine. This is apparently then and that's where she ends. So I'm adding here. This apparently is a temporal healing plant. It seems like you find it and it has abilities beyond just touching it at all. That's fascinating. Cynthia, what do you have to add to this? Thank you, Heather.
Well, it's I'm speechless. Just looking at it, like feeling the energy of it, and it's profound. It feels like often we talk about white plants being protectors and guardians, and I know that when the scientists are looking at it, they're using the word parasitizing. So that's a very it's like a loaded word. So it sounds like, okay, this plant is drawing nutrients off of others. Most likely, if you look at it from the same viewpoint that Heather's notes are suggesting, this plant is requested to be present upon a plant, and it's been placed in a situation where it's not considered to be a pest or a nuisance, but instead is probably providing something to that whole area. And that's the missing piece of this puzzle that hasn't really been pointed out. Although, obviously, if the indigenous people are coming to the plant requesting its healing medicine, then they do know. And so that part didn't get really properly covered here. But I think we can feel it. Those of us who know that the white buffalo's return last month is an indicator of, this time of the golden age, the golden timeline. And to me, this plant is a protector. It's been here for a long time, although it's new to me. And so clearly it's not new to some people, but it feels like a protector that's new on the scene for some of us. And it's welcoming us to obtain nutrients, maybe in these light bodies, these crystal bodies that we've talked about on past shows. So I see it as an extremely positive portent and omen and light bringer on the path with us.
I think it's cool because you can just focus on it and receive healing. So as all of us are here finding it in the wild, it can be our medicine here and now, just tapping into it. And so, yeah, that's beautiful.
Chris?
Yeah, no, I thought it was like when I first heard about this plant, I never heard about it before. And just doing some more research in the United States, you can find it from Maine to California, from Florida to Alaska, but it's absent in the Southwest, Intermountain West, and Central Rocky Mountains. So it's not everywhere in the United States, but a lot of it is. So if you guys are going out into the forest or something and you see this, you might be like, "What? That? I never saw that before." So to me, it's new. Other people have known about it for a while, but to me, it was a completely new thing, and how it doesn't use photosynthesis.
So I'm in Tennessee, and this should be something that's found no problem in Tennessee, yet I've never heard of it nor seen anything like it, unless I just didn't know what I was looking at. But it doesn't look recognizable to me. Gypsy JJ in Oklahoma, I would assume, yes, that's down in the same southern region that is not southwestern, so I would assume it would also be in Oklahoma. Quite loony to have a plant that doesn't use the sun for photosynthesis. It's definitely different. Speaking of loony, we know the Looney Tunes. Go ahead.
I was going to just say
getting
one
there.
more before we go
ahead.
to Looney Tunes. The roots of this plant, they say they're dried and they're powdered, and they're used as a tea for treating convulsions, fainting spells, fits, epilepsy, insomnia, muscular spasms, nervous irritability, and various female troubles, whatever various female troubles are. That's interesting. They use the terminology. So it definitely has those medicinal purposes. But I've never gone to the store and you look at all the different teas and stuff they have. I've never seen a tea for the Indian pipe plant, but I'm going to have to start looking.
for entertainment
It
purposes.
might not be a right.
It's similar to a mushroom. That's what I was thinking. Yeah, Heather chimed in. Yeah, it is similar to a mushroom. That's what I would probably
It
figure
might-
it was. Mushrooms
might
that a
not be
dog
a,
chewed on or something.
It might not be a tea that you can buy over the counter either. That might be like a rose tea or something you would like to boil yourself, you know?
Right. Heather's saying you might not find it in stores because it's considered sacred.
That too.
She says we were taught not to mess with it, just to honor it.
Ah, nice.
Just so you guys know, don't be rubbing them up and making tea. As Jerry suggests. I'm just playing.
Hey, I didn't come up with it.
When we were talking about the ghost redwood trees, they look similar, but they're like a redwood tree that's all white. They draw their nutrients off the surrounding redwoods. So this seems similar in that sense of the sacred nature of it, the protector nature, don't mess with it nature, and being supported by others. But and having said all that, it's supposed to be in California. I've never seen it here. So it's really interesting. Seems new on the timeline.
So the key to this is honor it. Do not pick it. Do not make tea out of it unless you have a really good reason for it. Convulsions might be a pretty good reason. But honor it and request its healing power. And temporarily, without even touching it, it has the ability to heal you according to legend. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Quite loony indeed. Like I was getting to, Looney Tunes, we know has a specific character. Daffy Duck. Daffy Duck is what kind of duck, Mr. Chris, Mr. Duck?
Daffy Duck is a loon. That's why he's a Looney Tune.
That is correct. And most loons are black, correct? Like Daffy is?
Well, in my old timeline, they were just black. They're like the way they are now is totally foreign to me. They have a black head. They've got a green ring around the neck. And then the rest of their body is like black and white spotted. To me, it was always like Daffy Duck. They're always like completely black, and they had a white ring around its neck.
So what am I looking at here on the screen? Because that's not a black head on the right. That looks like something completely different.
Yes, it's the rare white loon. And this picture was like recently taken. Yeah, so white loons, like loons keep changing. And I think loons, like, again, they're giving us this is like another puzzle piece. And then every time we have a white animal, I'm always tuning into like the super protectors. What does it protect? And usually is it protecting a person, place, or thing? Like that's how I'll start when I start tuning into it. And for the white loon, I was getting a thing. And I was a thing. What do you mean a thing? So I was tuning into it, a protector of abundance, a protector of love, protector of luck. There are like 10 different, protective type things that this white loon can protect. And I think, just the sound of its voice is a type of light language, and I think I've spoken about that before here, but the sound of the loon and that unique call that it has to me is like so beautiful. Maybe because I'm an Anatra and I'm a Looney Tune, Daffy Duck. So yeah, so I just totally beautiful.
Are you going to learn the call?
I should get like a loon whistle. They actually have.
So something tells me by the conference he may or may not have one, knowing Chris.
If you have a problem going to sleep at night, I found these like 8-hour videos on YouTube. You could play in the background of the sound of the loon. And it sounds like you're on a lake out in the middle, northern United States or in Canada, and you just hear the loons calling to each other. And some people will fall asleep by that. So might want to try to experiment with that if you have insomnia. Besides drinking that tea made from the Indian pipe plant.
So yet another change that we have been monitoring for quite a while. The loons have become even more loony over time. And again, it connects back to the Looney Tunes also. So it's funny how all of this like is connected together. All the different separate Mandela effects, not all of them. I'm sure they are all somehow, but a lot of the separate Mandela effects tend to roll in together. Like Looney Tunes, the Looney Duck, the loon, the white loon. I don't know, just fascinating how that happens.
Absolutely.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, next slide, please. Coming up, folks, I cannot wait. I am so very excited. The 2024 International Mandela Effect Conference, our fourth annual in-person conference, our annual summit, as it says here, will be in Nashville, Tennessee this year, ladies and gentlemen. Nashville, Tennessee, November 7th through the 10th. Tickets are on sale now. Make sure you get yours before they sell out. They do sell out quick, that I can assure you. Tickets on sale, imec.world, imec.world. We are only charging $185 for the full 3-day experience, which is definitely a amazing price and an experience you're not going to forget. I know I've done, 4 of these now I've been to? Kind of have to. I'm the MC. I've been to a few of these, you could say, and I know it's definitely I would call it life-changing event every time I've been. It's really been very special, very magical, very amazing. And I've not found anyone who has said any different. Join us in Nashville. Go ahead and scan that QR code now. That is a quick link to your ticket. Also, make sure to bring a +1. We would love to have you guys bring as many people as possible into this incredible phenomenon. Next slide, please. A very, very special thank you to our Patreon members, both new and current. We don't have any newcomers in the last 6 months. Come on over, folks. Become a Patreon member. Help support Patreon. Over there, you're going to get a green screen episode. Come on, mouth. We're almost there. A green screen episode every month from the International Mandela Effect Conference. Those are only available to our Patreon members. Do make sure you guys sign up to catch those. This month's is definitely a amazing discussion. Definitely got a lot to do with the conversations we've had here, and we go even more depth into some really fun stuff. So I cannot wait for you guys to see that. But special thank you once again to all of our Patreon members. Silver level, been with us over 6 months on Patreon. Laura Bortman, Jojo Williams, Vit Hartman, Lisa Henderson, Lauren Monson, Kathleen Wright, William Marquez, Ann Gaynor, Lene Harlia, and Andrew Christie. And the gold members over a year: Jody, Colleen Learley, Stephanie Clay, James, JD Peterson, shout out JD over in the chat, Paul Ellis, huge shout out to Bo Kim, our biggest supporter thus far, Allison Eastman, Gail Brown, Luisa Diaz, Teresa Richards, Belinda Enders, and Lori Glasner. Thank you guys so very much for being Patreon supporters. Once again, Patreons receive a free green room episode. I will get the right words out eventually, folks. Can you tell I have had a heck of a day so far? Too much talking. The tongue is done. Green room episode will be available very shortly from this month, and we have all of the ones we've done thus far available to our Patreons. Of course, you can scan the QR code here. Go ahead and become a Patreon member instantly by scanning the QR code and filling out that information. Next slide, please. Mark your calendars, ladies and gentlemen. Wednesday, August 28th, 2024 will be the next open tables. Mercury retrogrades, says Catch Spiral. I believe that. It's affecting my tongue badly. It's trying to retrograde my tongue for some reason. Wednesday, September 25th will be the... I can't do it. Will be the following open tables after August. So August 28th and September 25th. Mark your calendars for both. There will we're going to see about the October episode. We've got a couple things planned, a lot going on toward that time of the year. So we'll see how that works itself out also. But definitely mark your calendars for August and September. Moving along to the next slide, please. Or do we have any slides left? We do not, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank our amazing team here, Cynthia Sue Larson of Reality Shifters, Christopher Anitra of The Quantum Businessman, and Shane Robinson of Unbiased and On the Fence. Also, huge shout out to our local herbologist and producer, Heather, in the background, who does such an incredible job, holds all of this together. She schedules everything. She holds the show together. She helps us out so much, runs the background, runs things so smoothly. She's the reason we're able to do this as well as we're able to do this. She's helped us in the interviews we had all last couple of weeks, getting speakers for the conference. I don't sing her praises enough on here, ladies and gentlemen. I speak of the team all the time, and I know she don't like it when I embarrass her like this, but huge shout out to producer Heather. She does an amazing job. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of producer Heather, Cynthia Sue Larson, Christopher Anitra, and Shane Robinson, my name's Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf. Together, we are the International Mandela Effect Conference. And remember, until next we meet, ladies and gentlemen, together we go, together we
Grow.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.